Hey guys, this is the Maverick 427 and today we're doing something a little bit different. My Dota 2 is broken, so I'm reinstalling it, and that's taking all day, and just as I decide to reinstall it, they released patch 7.34. So while I'm waiting for it to download, I thought, why not take a look at the patch, do a patch analysis video. So here's the blog post. I'm not going to read through it, but I'll just scroll down so you can pause and read it if you want to. Basically, they say, here's the patch notes. They're working on stuff for the 10-year anniversary. It's almost ready, not quite ready, but it's coming soon. Trademark. And there's a few bug fixes they've also done that they didn't mention in the patch, but they just have listed here. So yeah, let's go straight to the patch. I will put a disclaimer here saying that I mostly play Turbo currently, so this is going to be focused on Turbo mode. And I'm also not a pro player. I am literally garbage at this game, so take my words with a pinch of salt. But I do watch some pro games, and this change is going to make it interesting. So they changed the draft order for Captain's mode. Originally there were 2-3-2 bans and 2-2-1 picks, so here's the order it was originally. And now they've changed it so first pick gets 3 bans, and second pick starts with 4 bans. So it's ban, other team gets double ban, first team gets ban, second team gets double ban, and then one more ban for the first team. So straight away, second pick gets an extra ban. And we've gone from 4 bans total to 7 in the first phase, which is kind of crazy. And I think this is needed because if there was like 1 or 2 or 3 broken heroes, second pick had to waste their bans banning those heroes. Otherwise, the team that gets first pick just gets the best one, and it's like, ha, sucks to be you. And first pick, in the meantime, gets to just ban whatever they don't want to deal with that the enemy is good at. So now second pick gets 4 bans. They ban the broken hero and 3 other things. And first pick also gets banned 3 other things. So they take out a lot of the stuff. So if we ever end up in a meta with like 3 or 4 heroes that dominate everything, they're just never going to see play. Because now you can ban out those heroes plus whatever you're worried about from your opponent that they usually first pick. And then first pick has a pick and second pick has a pick, and then we go to another ban. And this also does something. So originally you had first pick and then 2 picks by team 2, and over here they could pick up the super strong combos, things like IO Leshrac, for example. They could just go IO Lesh and the other team doesn't have any way to respond. The only way they can prevent it is by banning one of those, or by picking one of them, and then they have one of the heroes in a combo that's not that good without the other hero. So now both of them gets 1 hero, and then first pick gets 2 bans and second pick gets 1 ban, so they equal up to, what is that, 5 bans each now? It's crazy. But yeah, it's also now very difficult, I think, to get any of those super strong combos like Iolish or, I don't know, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. But yeah, you have to reveal it a little bit, and then you get more bans. And then second pick gets another pick, then first pick gets 2, then second pick gets 2, then first pick gets 1. Okay, so then you show most of your draft, which means that you can basically go through 3 heroes without them having a chance to ban. So if they want to block pick something, they have to pick it. They can't ban out something that they realize, oh crap, if they get this 3rd hero, it's going to be really good. And they do both still have an opportunity to get a combo here. So these guys can go Eilish, these guys go whatever they want, if it's still open at this point. And then they get 4 more bans and pick and pick. So second pick still gets the last pick, which is an advantage. I think honestly, before, first pick had an advantage and second pick had an advantage. Like first pick gets the most broken heroes, second pick gets the last pick so they can counter everything. Now, I think that second pick is just better overall, but we'll see what the pros prefer. Then they also reduced the amount of time you get for the first phase of bans from 30 to 15 seconds, because otherwise we have, what's that, 2 minutes for one team and a minute and a half for the other team, just forever. And in most cases, the first set of bans, you should know more or less what you're going to be banning, so they shouldn't need that long. They've also updated the UI for many abilities that we use in autocast to enable different behavior. Now, alternative cast exists, and it's like autocast, except it's called alternative cast by the sounds of it. So it's for things like Darkseer's Surge, Doom's Devour, Echo Stomp with Ags, Moran Leap with Ags, Stormhammer with Ags. So any of those abilities that have like 2 modes that you can switch between now use alternative cast instead of autocast. And they've added a new stat, slow resistance, which reduces the impact of slows on your hero by a percentage, and status resistance no longer impacts slows. So the reason they did this, according to them, is that half the existing slows had both duration and impact reduced by status resistance, but now it affects only the duration of slows. So before, status resistance double nerfed some slows, so it reduced the amount it slowed by and how long it lasted. So now status resistance will only reduce how long it lasts, and slow resistance will reduce how much you slowed by. Which is, I don't know, we'll see how this pans out. I think it might be a good change, but it does add more complexity. Scan now has 2 charges. So in pubs, especially low tier pubs, I don't know how much this matters, because half the time people forget scan exists, unless they think, oh, they're Roshing, let's check Rosh with a scan. But you know, it's good. Like if you smoke up, you can now scan both of the enemy jungles and find out where someone is. Before, if you scanned like the triangle, because it's the biangle now, but if you scanned their triangle and they weren't there, it was like, oh, well, they could be in the main jungle, they could be by the Tormentor, they could be in one of the lanes. Now you can see things a little bit better. Killing Rosh no longer grants control of any watches on the map. This is a good change, I think. Basically, if you got Rosh, the other team was probably going to retreat back to their base anyway. So getting all the watches just made you have insane map control. It was a bit too impactful to get Rosh. Main jungle watches for both Radiant and I have been moved to different locations. Adjusted the position of the triangle watches. Moved both outposts from the main jungle to the triangles. Okay, I don't really know where the watch has been moved, so I can't comment on it, but this is big. Because now both teams are going to have an outpost near the Rosh pit. Near both Rosh pits. So that should somewhat counteract the advantage of whichever team gets it first having the outpost near it. So this will be interesting to see how it plays out. Mighty Mind's buff in Mind's area increased. That's nice. Mighty Mind's is, I think, the Dire top lane area. So Dire gets a little bit more regen. And the added UI to support self-restoring item charges. Spoiler, Hanamitis now has charges. So yeah, let's get to the actual items. I'm gonna try not to go too fast and spoil it. We can see Refresher Shard. Blood Grenade. Cost decreased to 50. Max inventory from 3 to 2. Initial stock 3 to 2. Restock time increased. So blood grenades are cheaper, but there's less of them. So you better make them worth it. Yeah, and by watching a little bit of the Riyadh Masters, sometimes people just like throw out a blood grenade if they think they can maybe get a kill, or they just want to harass for a bit of damage. Now they might be saving it more for actual kills in pro games. And in pubs, it's more punishing if you throw it and don't get the kill as well. Refresher Shard. That provides... Oh. So, yeah, this is the same stats as the actual Refresher Orb, isn't it? Let's come here to Wikipedia, find Refresher Orb, see what it offers. So it gives 12 regen, 6 mana regen, 20 damage. Yeah, it's the exact same stats. So it's literally like having a Refresher Orb that goes away once you use it. Okay. So now there's actually a reason to hold it in your inventory and not just have it backpacked until you need it. That's not bad. Smoke. Disguise duration increased by 10 seconds. And while the caster is still disguised, any allies that come within 300 range of them will also get the buff. Each smoke can only be applied once to allies. It cannot be reapplied if it was broken. This is nice. So if you smoke and someone's just outside the smoke AoE because they messed up and they went to go and hit a creep or something stupid, now you can just reapply the smoke. And it also means that you can smoke and then walk to where you're going and pick up your allies along the way, and they'll get smoked as you go. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting change in pro games. In pubs, especially turbos, smokes are not used as often, at least in low tier Dota. So, well, I guess it means that when you mess up your smoke, it doesn't matter as much. So nice. Tango. Consuming nature's profit, sprout trees no longer grants healing. Nice. I hate profit. I'm opposed to this change. Yeah, but we'll talk about this more when we get to nature's profit, but basically means if you want to use your tango to get out of a tree, you're not getting any regen from it. Arcane Blink now restores 200 health and 100 mana. So before, Arcane Blink just had super low cooldown compared to the other blinks, and that was its draw. And now it basically means that between fights you can just blink around while farming and get back to full health and mana and never have to go back to fountains. So maybe there's some world where you can get this early and then just have infinite HP and mana, which is interesting. I don't know how impactful it'll be during fights, because usually your blink gets cancelled in fights because you're taking damage, so you're never going to get a burst heal. But if you're chasing a dude or you're running away from someone, this might come up. Armlet now grants 35% slow resistance when it's active. So this is really nice for those beefy strength heroes who activate Armlet and want to run at someone and they get hit by one random Drow Frost Arrow and they can't stick to anyone and they die. So I think this is a huge buff to heroes like Lifestealer, Huskar. Yeah, this is really nice. Bed of Fury, damage bonus increased by 5, and Quell bonus damage against non-hero units decreased by 5 for melee and 1 for ranged. So it's just better now, because melee heroes get the same total damage, but now it's more damage when hitting heroes and the same when hitting creeps. So it's just straight up better. Crystallis is cheaper. Nice. Daedalus is cheaper because of the Crystallis recipe cost change. Silver's Edge, recipe cost increased, total cost is unchanged because it has a Crystallis in it, so these cancel out. So they're trying to buff Daedalus here, not Silver's Edge. Desolator, Soul Stealer maximum damage bonus increased from 20 to 30. So now this item scaled even better. Like, this is actually a legitimately good late game item now. Like, you get it early, you rack up your kill to get your 30 charges now, and it's still a good item late game. It doesn't fall off as much as it used to. Diffusal Blade. Inhibit no longer roots creeps, instead applies normal slow. I'll be honest, I did not even know it rooted creeps. I don't think that's come up much, but this is fine, I guess. And Suppress now affects all units in a 350 AoE around the target. So this dispels you as, or no, it gives you move speed. It doesn't dispel you. Yeah, it does dispel you. It dispels you. So if you use this on an enemy you're right next to, you dispel yourself, you slow them, you give yourself the movement speed. That's really nice. And if there's like multiple enemies grouped up, you can slow all of them. This is massive. This is actually a really good buff. Hand of Midas. Transmute now has 2 charges. Initially comes with 1 charge. Charge restore time 100 seconds. I think the cooldown always was 100 seconds already, so I think the cooldown is the same. You just now can stack up 2 charges, so if you die and your Hand of Midas had like 1 second left, before you'd be losing money because now you're literally just wasting time with it off cooldown. Now you're building up your second charge and you respawn and you go Midas a creep. This has just made Midas so much more efficient, because it's not just like when you die, it's sometimes you're walking between camps and your Midas is off cooldown for 5 or 10 seconds, and over a game that racks up and you lose gold because of it, because you're not using your Midas 100% off cooldown. Now it's like, now you effectively can always use it off cooldown, because as long as you don't get to the second charge, it's not on cooldown, it's not wasting its time. It's also kind of good if you want to hold a charge to counter like an Enchantress creep or something. I think a lot more heroes are going to be going Midas. I think this item is really good right now. Don't know about Turbo, it's like slightly less good in Turbo because everyone gets a lot of money anyway, but it also gives XP, so you know what, it's probably worth it. Oh, another thing, it guarantees a neutral item drop, so if you want to, like late game, if you're trying to get the tier 5 super fast or the tier 4s, you can save up your 2 charges as the time gets near to when they drop, and then you immediately go Midas 2 creeps, get 2 neutral items right off the bat. So that's a good change. I think Midas is good. Buy Midas. Harpoon, draw forth now has 50 mana cost. Strength heroes in shambles. Let's be honest, this item was really strong, but most heroes that use it don't have huge mana pools, so this is going to hurt. There's going to be times where there's a long drawn out fight and your Sven or whatever runs out of mana. This is a pretty big nerf. Halberd, disarm no longer pierces debuff immunity if applied beforehand. So I believe the way it used to work is if you used it and then they BKB'd, they're still disarmed. But if they were BKB'd and you used it on them, then they don't get disarmed until the BKB ends. But now it looks like if you BKB, it just takes it off. You're good. So yeah, this is a pretty big nerf to Halberd. A buff to BKB, and Jug and Knife Stealer and all those heroes with built-in debuff immunity. Helm of the Overlord increases neutral creep ability levels by 1. So same sort of buff, or not buff, but the same sort of thing Chen does with his shard. You take over a creep and it's 1 level higher, so it does more damage with its spells. That's pretty cool. And usually you use this on Ancients, so that might actually do a lot of damage with some of those abilities. Like I think the Black Dragon Fireball scales quite well. Holy Locket, refreshing the item now restores full charges of energy charge. Could you buy this on Tinker? Like, is this stupid? But yeah, I guess it's nice if you're a support who has a Holy Locket and you somehow get a Refresher Orb, or maybe you get the Refresher Shard from Roche late game. Then you get like a full stick of Holy Locket, and you can just burst heal someone twice with a Refresher. So yeah, this is actually Nice change. Lincoln Sphere. Transfer spell block from multiple sources now refreshes the buff instead of applying multiple instances and blocking multiple spells. So I saw this happen like in some of the games at the Riyadh Masters. I can't remember which team it was, but they had a Medusa, and the other 4 heroes on the team just built Lincolns and then put 4 Lincolns on the Medusa. So just to stun her, you have to pop 4 Lincolns, and then your 5th spell actually stuns. And by then, the first Lincoln's off cooldown, and they block another spell, and it was just obnoxious. Like, it was actually seriously obnoxious, and the other team couldn't deal with it. So I think this is a good change, because giving someone 4 spell blocks is kind of broken. Now instead you just increase the duration of the current spell block, and then it gets popped and it's used. So yeah, don't buy 4 Lincolns on your team anymore, guys. It's not good. Chain Lightning now deals 150% damage to illusions. Same thing from Mjolnir. Illusions are difficult to deal with, so they buffing up the items that do AoE damage. And like, honestly, Mjolnir late game wasn't that good against illusions, because the hero gets a heart, they get a Scuddy, the illusions are super tanky and they don't die to Mjolnir anyway. So I think this was needed, especially if you have a ranged carry, because you can't buy Battle Fury to deal with the illusions. You have to kind of go Mjolnir or just try and click each one down. So this is good. MKB is 75 monies cheaper. Nice. Nullifier no longer purges debuff immune targets. This is really good. This needed to happen. Like, Nullifier was super strong. Like, in pro games, I think nearly every team made sure they had at least 1 Nullifier buyer on their team, because being able to purge a dude and repeatedly purge all buffs from them for the duration of the Nullifier effect was really strong. This made heroes like Ursa completely unplayable, because you put Nullify on him, and even if he BKBs, his overpower stacks just get purged. He couldn't do anything. So now if Ursa activates overpower, BKBs and jumps in, if he gets nullified, he still gets his 5 or 6 hits off. Overwhelming blink damage on impact decreased from 100 plus 150% strength to 100 plus 50% strength, and it now deals the other 100% as damage over the duration of the slow. So I think this is purely a Tinker nerf, because Tinker would buy Overwhelming Blink and blink around doing damage in AoE. Now he does slightly less damage. Like, if you just blink normally, it does the same amount of total damage, but if you're refreshing it and blinking repeatedly, the damage over time portion is effectively wasted. So yeah, this is a Tinker nerf. Radiance burned out now deals 150% damage to illusions, same as Mjolnir. Like, some heroes don't want to buy Battle Fury. They can't buy Battle Fury. They need a way to deal with illusions. Radiance is now kind of viable. I mean, it's still not a lot of damage to tank illusions with a heart and a Scuddy. Revenant's Brooch. Phantom Providence did not know that was the name of its active. No longer grants attack speed. And it now applies a minus 20% magic resistance debuff to enemies on attack that lasts 3 seconds. And it no longer deals no damage to debuff immune targets, but reduction by magic resistance still applied. Okay, so it now works like Muertes Out, where you can hit people who are BKB'd, but they just take less damage because they have 50% magic resistance. Except they don't have 50% because they have... Oh, well, no, the debuff immunity would stop this. But if you hit someone who's not debuff immune, they now take more magic damage. That's actually maybe good on like those hybrid right-click casters like Lina. Like, you pop Revenant's Brooch, you throw an attack to put the debuff on them, you combo them, and then you use your remaining attacks with your super fast attack speed. Yeah, I think this item is viable on some of those hybrid heroes now. Maybe someone like Void Spirit could also build this. We'll see. Rod of Atos. Also, Gleipnir, both are getting nerfed. The recipe has changed. Now takes Staff Wizardry, a Vit Booster, and a recipe. This is like almost the same as its old recipe, except it used to take 2 of the staffs. And no recipe back in the day. So it doesn't take the crowns anymore, so it used to provide, I think, what was it? 9 strength, 9 agi, and 24 int. Now it gives you no strength, no agi, and only 15 int. But it gives you 300 health. And then Gleipnir also loses strength and agi, gives you 350 health instead. It still gives you the full int though. Like the int part of it hasn't been nerfed apparently. And it gets the Maelstrom lightning buff. So Universal Heroes were rushing Gleipnir early because it gave them a ton of damage with all of its stats. It was cheap. It gave them lockdown. It was just like, it just gave them everything. Like Snapfire in particular would buy this and just Gleipnir a bunch of dudes. They'd click them down and it was really, really good. So now it's a lot less damage to Universal Heroes and it's no damage to Strength and Agi heroes. Int heroes get more damage from it though. No, I lie. Int heroes get less damage as well. They get the same amount on Gleipnir, but yeah, it's just nerfed. It's just less stats, but it makes you slightly tankier. Shivas, Arctic Blast, more damage to illusions. Nice, more ways to deal with illusions. Skullbasher, 5 more damage. Abyssal, 5 more damage. Like these items, you buy it late game for the lockdown, but they're not great scaling damage items, so this helps a little bit. Ah man, I miss the old days when Abyssal Blade gave literally plus 100 damage. Those were the days. So Soaring, recipe cost decreased, 50 cheaper. Total cost is 50 cheaper. And gives you 20 more mana. This item needed a buff. It was kind of awkward to use sometimes. Spirit Vessel recipe changed. Okay. I don't think a lot of people were buying this, so I think this is going to be a buff. Oh look, it's getting the crown. So it's Earner Shadows, crown recipe. It doesn't give you flat health bonus. The total cost is unchanged. And it goes from +2 to +12 all attributes. So is this what Universal Heroes are going to be rushing now? Maybe. Like, it doesn't give you the lockdown of the Gleipnir, so I don't know if as many heroes are going to rush it, but this is nice. It's a good buff. And finally for the items, Veil of Discord now deals 200 damage to all barriers. Okay, so if they pop pipe and you just veil them, you just wipe out their pipe. Nice. And it says all barriers, so I guess it blows away things like a Batten Shield and what else? Timber Ags? What other barriers are there? Does it get rid of Crimson? Is that a barrier? I think Crimson Guard is a barrier. I'll have to check that one. But yeah, this is really good. Oh, and Pavis. And Glimmercape. Yeah, so normally you would just throw this out the start of fight. Maybe now you want to hold it until they pop their pipe, whatever. Yeah, this item wasn't brought too much, so it needed a bit of a buff. Onwards to the neutral items. Arcane Ring. More cooldown. Oh, I like this item. Give you mana. Needless Gloves. 2 more damage. Nice. Faded Brooch. Less move speed, but more mana. Now, the move speed was a nicer part of it, so that's kind of sad. Lance Pursuit, the movement slow is increased by quite a bit. So this might make it a bit more viable on chasing heroes. Something like a Lifestealer maybe. Who already has a slow, and if he hits you with this, then he just slows you a lot. Occult Bracelet loses half of its magic resistance, which is sad, because this is also a nice neutral item. Pigpole, -1 attribute. popular in pro games. It's a good escape, good movement item. Seeds of Serenity, health bonus increased from +3 to +4. Oh, that's a health regen when you put it down. Yeah, that's good. This item is kind of weak, I think. Okay, now the tier 2s. Dragon Scale. Afterburn effect is no longer applied by illusions. Get Wrecked, Naga, and Terrorblade, and Piao, and all that. It's actually kind of broken that it was applied by illusions. Remove Aquila, less mana regen. Damn. They're really nerfing all the mana regen items here. Mana's going to be a bit rare to find. Specialist Array, +2 attributes. Nice. I like this item, but the problem is, like, compared to Vambrace, it's almost never worth it, because the only benefit is that it gives you the 2 split attacks occasionally, whereas Vambrace gives you good stats plus magic resistance or a bunch of other buffs. This one also, the magic resistance get nerfed, so casters are back on the menu, boys. Tier 3, Ceremonial Robe, less mana. Okay. Enchanted Quiver, more damage on its first attack. A little bit. It's nice. Ogre Seal Totem, mana cost decreased to 25. Woo! Can flop around all day now. It's nice. 75 is a lot of mana for some heroes. Especially the sort of heroes who want this, who are usually like beefy strength initiators who don't have a big mana pool in the first place. Titan Sliver. Status resistance bonus decreased by 2%. This item is so good. It's probably still good, but yeah, like usually if you're a core and you see this, you take it. Vindicator's Axe provides 20% slow resistance. So if you're getting kited, you might want to grab this one instead of the Titan Sliver now. Tier 4s. Aesthetics Cap. Endurance, which I think is the active when you take damage and it triggers. Also grants 40% slow resistance. Nice. Yeah, so it's good for those heroes who get kited a lot as well. Havoc Hammer. Instead of pushing people away, it pulls nearby enemies in by 100 units. Okay, that's a nice change. Like, it was actually kind of weird because you'd like blink in with Centaur or whatever and stun them and then activate Havoc Hammer. Then everyone is scattered and you can't nuke them as a team. Now it's like a little mini vacuum, and vacuum's a really powerful spell, so I think this actually is a good item now. Before it felt kind of bad to get it because other tier 4s are so much better, but now this one might be really good. Martyr's Plate now gives you health regen. Now only redirects magical damage, and it redirects 25% to 20 and lasts 2 more seconds. Okay, so this is kind of nice because now you can build around it better, because before you're redirecting all the magic damage, all the pure damage, all the physical damage, and you just died. Very few heroes could survive through it, but now if you get this on a hero that has like a pipe or whatever, you super tank against magic damage. So if you direct all the magic damage to you, then you don't care, you survive. It does make it a bit worse in that you can't save your team from physical burst, but I think overall this is a buff. Ninja Gear, fix not providing the bonus movement when activated. Nice, didn't know it had that issue. Agility bonus decreased and move speed bonus decreased. Yeah, this was also really popular in pro games, just for the smoking aspect, because it lets you get the initiation and it lets you move around the map undetected. So yeah, I guess they don't want to nerf the main aspect of it, which is the smoke yourself, but they don't want to be too value. Don't know how much you see this item in pubs, But I mean, it is nice, or it was nice on edgy heroes. Spell Prism is nerf. Oh, I love this item. Everyone loves this item. So less attributes, a lot less mana regen. Like that is quite a lot. Feels bad. I think the item's still good for the right situations, but now it doesn't just auto fix whatever mana regen issues you had. Trickster Cloak. Evasion bonus decreased to 17%. Magic resistance bonus decreased to 17%. So from 1/5 the damage to 1/6 the damage, basically. Shadows. Book of Shadows. We're getting to the tier 5s now. Shadows now only makes targets untargetable by enemy of the caster. This is a big buff because you put it on your ally to try and save them, and then you can't force staff them anymore. You can't Glimmercape them. You can't Holy Locket them. You can't Pavis them. Oops. So this is really, really good. This now gives you an additional save as a support. And if you need to use multiple saves in quick succession, like you want to Book of Shadows 4-staff, Glimmer them, you can do that. Book of the Dead. Less strength, less int. I don't know how popular this item was. I feel like it wasn't picked up that much, but it did give a lot of stats. Fallen Sky. Strength bonus increased. Okay, that is quite a lot of extra strength, and you usually get it on strength heroes, your initiator, so this is a big buff. Yeah, so I guess let's go on to the hero updates. Abaddon. Okay, let's go slowly, no spoilers. Mistcoil is slightly worse on early levels, slightly better later levels. So this, in Turbo, this doesn't matter too much because you get levels fast anyway, but depending on the build, you often leave just a single value point of Mistcoil for quite a while, so this is quite a big nerf early, I think. But late game, it's better. It's just straight up better. So maybe you can do a build where you max Mistcoil early now. Might be worth it. Alchemist, corrosive weaponry. 1 less stack at all levels. Movement stone status resistance reduction per stack is now increased by 1.5 whenever he's in Chemical Rage. Okay, so it's better during Chemical Rage, worse outside of it. AA. So Ice Vortex lasts less long at the later levels, and it gives more vision. This is probably a buff overall. Level 20 talent plus 5% Ice Vortex slow increased magic damage replaced with okay, so you can get back to better than the old duration. So if you want this thing as like just a vision spell and you don't really care about the slow and the magic damage increase, then it's better. Okay. Anti-Mage. So his shard has been reworked. Previous effect is removed. I don't even remember what his old shard was, but now it creates an illusion of Anti-Mage next to an enemy caster upon reflecting their spell. Illusion deals 75% damage, takes 100%, and has a duration of 4 seconds. And it gives you the new ability Counterspell Ally. So you could put the Counterspell shell on a targeted ally, and it does the same thing of making an illusion when it blocks and reflects a spell. Cost 45 mana, 3-second cooldown. So I think this part of it is a bit awkward because Anti-Mage is a core, so he doesn't care about his allies, but this part is good. Like, if they are stupid enough to cast a spell on you, they get attacked by an illusion. And, like, you can still use this defensively. Like, if you see your mid guy or one of your supports getting gone on, you can protect them, and then you get an illusion of yourself hitting the dude chasing them. So I think it is good, and Like sometimes anti-mage isn't also the one sieging the tower. Like sometimes it'll be your mid laner who's better at hitting towers, and he goes up there with Aegis and hits the tower. And you can just put counterspell on him. So I think this is a really good shard. I think it might even be worth buying, but you should definitely do Torments and get it. Okay, let's look at the talents. Level 10, Blink cooldown replaced with Mana Void Radius. Okay. That was the 15 talent, so 10 and 15 talents just swapped around. Good. This was obnoxious. It does slow down his farm speed and his scaling, so that's good. At level 20, the Mana Void damage multiplier is increased by a tiny bit. And also, Blink cost range is decreased. It's another very powerful talent. Anti-mage, big buffs overall, I think. Big buff to the shard, nerfs to the blink nonsense. Arc Warden, everybody's least favorite hero. So the Tempest version, which is the one you get by default on Dire, no longer provides magical attack bonus, and now provides 20, 40, 60, 80 base bonus attack damage. That's really, really good. You can crit off that. You can like, is crit the only thing on a range here that does anything? Because you can't cleave off it, but yeah, now your crits work on it. Other things that work on base damage now taken into account. Double damage rune now gives you 160 bonus damage when you use magnetic field. Pretty crazy. Tempest doubled is now point target ability with 700 cast range. So instead of making your clone next to you, you can make it appear 700 away. This is actually, like, it doesn't sound that big, but it's actually an insane buff. Like, 700 range is across the river in mid lane. Like, you could be standing on your side of the river at level 6, and just spawn the double right next to the enemy and just go on them. This is actually terrifying. Like, your Tempest double effectively gets a free mini blink dagger now. It's a huge buff. Arc Warden might actually just become meta in the pro games with this. Maybe it needs more, but like, I think this is huge. In pubs, this is pubs. People don't know how to play Arc Warden. You're still going to get wrecked by smurfs. Nothing's changed. Okay, health plus 50 at level 10. That's quite a lot of health for a level 10 talent. The magnetic field attack speed bonus magic is 25 now. And the 20 talent of magnetic field cooldown reduction is decreased from 9 to 8 seconds. His later talents are a bit worse. The early talent is good. This is a huge buff. Hero is just much better. Axe! Agility gain nerfed. Counter-helix damage increased early on, same later. So he gets a little bit less armor as the game goes on, but it doesn't matter if you get in your cutting blades. You get armor anyway, so small buff to the laning phase. Bane. Brain Sap now fully pierces debuff immunity. It's great. You can now damage people and heal yourself, even if they have BKB. Sleeping units aren't awakened by any damage dealt by Bane. Okay, so you can just only get attack speed against sleeping units. I guarantee in Turbo there's going to be some stupid meme build where someone rushes like a Deso, Daedalus, Mjolnir on Bane. Just nightmares a guy, brain saps him and starts hitting him. Sounds terrible. People are going to try it. But like, it's a nice buff overall. I think the being able to brain sap a nightmare guy is the big one. Because before you would nightmare and then brain sap and then try and quickly fiend script before they activated BKB or blink, or well, they can't blink, or but they could like cast spout or something. Now you can nightmare them, brain sap to do damage, and then fiend script, which removes the nightmare, and they're just chain stunned. They can't get out of it. they don't have a chance to respond. So it's a big buff. Level 10, Brain Sap cooldown from 2 to 3. Brain Sap even better. 25, Brain Sap damage heal, plus 50 damage. Brain Sap is a good spell. And his shard works off Brain Sap too, so I still don't think you can play them as a core, but Bane is definitely a better hero. Batrider, cast point for Flaming Lasso increased. That's a big nerf. Like, even in pubs, this matters. It gives enough time for people to activate BKB, blink away, force away, stun him, do something. In pro games, this is really big. Huge nerf. Beastmaster, Call of the Wild Hawk. The ability has been reworked. This is what, like the 4th time they're changing the way the Hawk works? So Beastmaster summons a Hawk that circles around him and dives onto an enemy within 500 range, dealing damage and rooting them for 1 second. The Hawk cannot be controlled and will prioritize heroes and is killed upon Beastmaster's death. Hawk is an attack interval of 4 seconds, but it scales with attack speed. Okay. Hawk lasts 25 seconds and it has a 30-second cooldown late game. Hawk base health is a lot higher late game, 675 health. Magic resistance from 0 to 60%. And XP bounty decreased to very little early on, almost the same late game. So basically, instead of this being a vision spell, now you just have like an orbiting hawk around you that drops down and roots and damages people, and then keeps orbiting, and then 4 seconds later drops down and roots and damages them again. Like, this is weird, but you can literally the shard because it no longer grants dive bomb, but it gives you an additional hawk. So now every 4 seconds you get dive bombed by 2 hawks. I think he's a better team fighter and a better brawler and just a better ganker and 1v1 hero. Like, now you don't need to commit the raw to keep someone locked in place. You can just run them down with your hawks, constantly bombing them and rooting them. But he is going to be much worse for vision, which is a big part of why he was popular in Pro Dota. I think for pubs, this is a huge buff. I think for pro games, it might be a nerf. I think the vision was the biggest part of the hero. Okay, Bloodseeker. He heals less from creeps early on with Thirst, and Rupture lasts 1 second less. Baby nerfs, he sustains less while in lane. Hero is probably still fine. Bounty Hunter, Shadow Walk. The Agnum's shard upgrade is moved to a separate sub-ability called Friendly Shadow. So, apply Shadow Walk and all of its bonuses to the target ally. Yada yada yada. So, it's the same as the old shard, except now instead of having to cast it on yourself or an ally, you can cast it on yourself and an ally, and it's a separate ability. So you don't have to now self-cast it anymore when you get the shard. You can still use the ability as normal, and then just cast it on an ally with a separate sub-ability. It's just a nice quality of life buff. Yeah, I think this makes the shard much better. Brewmaster. Base armor increased by 1. Literally unkillable. Cinderbrew, dealing damage or receiving magic damage. Extends brewed up duration. Okay. What does this spell actually do? I'll be honest, I don't know what brewed up does. Let's go take a look at it quickly, because so he drenches himself in alcohol, causing enemies to move slow and ignite once it takes spell damage. And his drunken brawler stances are stronger. Okay. Okay, so taking and receiving damage increases the duration of it. Drunken Brawler. Fire Stance grants attack speed now, and tripled when brewed up. 5 stance crit is decreased by 4%, but I think that's more than compensated for by the attack speed buff. And they fixed an issue where Broodings did not get increased health from level 20 talent. Okay. He seems better. It's just buffed. Bristleback. Viscous Nasal Goo. No more Scepter upgrade for it. And the Shard now increases stack limit by 3. And Bristleback, the passive, not the hero, is upgradable by Ags. So it allows Bristleback to be point targeted. Bristleback turns his back towards a targeted direction and after 0.5 seconds forcibly ejects 6 sequential quilt sprays in a tight conical pattern out of his back at 0.35 second intervals. He is slowed by 40% for the duration, disarmed and cannot turn, but can still cast his spells in any direction. So you just turn around and just like projectile diarrhea quills at them. Like if they already have a few stacks on them and they get stunned by something so that they're held in place, you can just insta-kill a dude, I think. And I believe each of these stacks gives you a stack of your ultimate of Warpath. So this lets you build up Warpath very quickly in a fight, which is needed because with the old Ags you could just have Warpath up 100% of the time, and now you can't because it's gone. So I don't know if this is better or worse. It's worse for right-click Bristleback, but it might be better for Teamfighter Brawler Bristleback. Hairball, which is the Shard ability, now applies 2 stacks of Nasal Goo and only 1 stack of Quilt Spray. Enemies in Fog of War are now hit by the Viscous Nasal Goo as well as the Quilt Sprays. The goo projectiles are no longer affected by spell reflection. Mana cost decreased, cooldown decreased. Spell is just better. So level 10 talent damage increased by 5. Quilt stack damage increased by 5. Health regen increased by 5. Okay, just buffs to his talents. Buff to Hairball. Buff to the Shard. Ags, I'm not sure if it's better or worse now, but yeah, it's an interesting concept. I think it'll be quite cool to see in play. Broodmother. Very popular hero at the Riyadh Major. Base armor decreased by 1. Hero literally takes damage. Base strength increased by 1. Agility gain increased by 0.2. Okay, so weaker early on, but she is a bit tankier and gets more agility over time. Okay, Insatiable Hunger's nerfed. She's not the laning goddess she was before, because she could just pop Insatiable Hunger, heal to full on creeps, and now it's reduced by 40%. Silken Bowler, the impact damage is decreased early on, still the same late. Yeah, I think the Insatiable Hunger one is the biggest nerf. Her lane is much weaker, but late game I think the hero is pretty much the same. Centaur Warrunner. Hoof Stomp. Radius decreased by 25. Cast point improved to 0 seconds. Always a huge buff to have a 0 second cast point. He now winds up for 0.5 seconds before the stomp, and he can move during this time but can't attack, casting other abilities, using items, or issuing hold position or cancel current action commands cancels the cast. This is an insanely big buff, because the biggest problem with Centaur is you blink in, or not even blink in, like you're in lane, you try and stun a dude, he just turns around, he runs away, and you have to cancel the stun because you aren't in range anymore. Now, you get near a guy, you start the stun, they try to run away, you follow them, and you stun them. Like, this seems super good. And it doesn't get cancelled if you get stunned or anything, so as long as you press Q, you're going to get a stun 0.5 seconds later. This seems insanely good. It's also really good for like if you're just chasing a dude down. Like the guys running away from you, you're running after them. Before, if you try and hoof stomp them, they get out of range, you miss. Now, you stun them. Centaur's back. I think this hero is just really good now. Double Edge, also buffed, cooldown decreased. Strength damage increased to a lot late game. Same early. And they changed the Ag Scepter again. He now gets a new ability called Workhorse. So the Centaur deploys and pulls a card for 8 seconds, gaining the Stampede buff for the first few seconds, depending on the level of Stampede. While active, the Workhorse ability is replaced with the Hitch a Ride sub-ability that can be activated with the same previous effect. So the Workhorse goes on cooldown once the card disappears. So before, with Hitch a Ride, you had to actually pick someone up in order to get the Stampede buff. Now you can always just get a free one hero Stampede on yourself whenever you want it with Workhorse. It's a 30-second cooldown. You can just Stampede every 30 seconds. And if you want to, you can save a dude. This seems good. Like, I don't know if it's a first item Ag's good, but I think like third, fourth item, you get an Ags. This sounds good. CK, minimum sum increased. Minimum damage increased. Sorry, maximum damage increased. That is a lot of damage at level 4. A lot of damage level 1. Pretty big stun as a minimum. This ability is really good. Chaos Strike to creep damage multiplier increased by 0.1. Okay. He farms slightly faster. Level 10 Chaos Strike lifesteal increased by 5%. Okay. It's a medium buff. Baby buffs. Here is a little bit better. Chen. Penitence. Now grants him bonus attack range on the target. Bit weird, but okay. Holy's Persuasion, the Ag Scepter Martyrdom cast range decreased from global to 1200. And Martyrdom can now be cast on enemies to damage them for the current values of Hand of God. I have no idea what Martyrdom does. Let's go take a look. I think it was the Ag's ability, or... Yeah, so grants Persuaded Creeps Martyrdom, sacrifice life of this unity, hold an ally, or damage an enemy with the current level of Hand of God. Yeah, it was a... You can sacrifice a creep to get a single target Hand of God or nuke. Before it was only a heal, now you get the ability to damage enemies. So hang on, Hand of God is quite a lot of healing. So that's a 400 HP heal with a 40 heal per second for, what is it? I think 10 seconds, it doesn't say here. But if you get like 4 creeps up against support and just martyrdom all of them, can you do that? Does that work? Nah, it's got 15-second cooldown, but like still, a 400 damage nuke on a support is a lot of damage. And I think this Chen players are probably happy. I mean, it's not global anymore, but 1200 range is still really, really big. So I think it's just straight up buffs. Chen players rejoice. Puppy is happy. Clinks. For Death Pact, the Ag Scepter now increases the number of hits to kill burning skeleton archers by 1. Skeleton Walk cooldown increased early on, same late. Burning Army spawn intervals decreased from 0.5 to 0.15 seconds. The distance is decreased by a lot. So the solar range goes down to 900 instead of 1300. And the cast range is decreased. So instead of a long spread out slowly created army. It's now a smaller, fast spawning army. I think this, so this is a buff, this is a nerf. The burden army I think is a buff because now your skeletons are close together. They're all going to be hitting the same dude more easily now. And they spawn faster. So if you want to burst down a guy, burning army is way better. So let's look at his talents. Skeleton walk cooldown reduction increased by 1 second. It's buff. Tar bomb attack damage decreased by 5. It's a nerf. Death pact health increased. Okay, it's a buff. Strafe cooldown reduction increased to 8 seconds. Also buff. Planks is buffed overall. The only actual nerf is skeleton walk early on. It's a much longer cooldown, but what's its duration? Skeleton walk. Yeah, it lasts 35 seconds. The cooldown in 24. You still have 100% uptime. Here is good. Clockwork. Vision nerfed a lot. But jetpack makes you faster. Woo! Only when overclocking. Never mind. Yeah, this is just a nerf. Poor Clockwork. Crystal Maiden, Freezing Field. Acceptor now also allows CM to move, attack, and cast spells during Freezing Field, in addition to the previous effects. Ah, so they took it off the shard, it's now part of the Ags. This sucks, like, getting that shard early from a Tormentor or just bind it yourself made CM a really good hero, in Turbo at least. Like, you could just rush a shard, alt, right-click people, nuke people, root people. It was so good. Now you have to get an Ags just for this. And then Scepter time to Frostbite increased by a lot, so the Scepter is just worse for what it used to do. But now you kind of have to buy it. Like, I think you have to go Scepter as soon as you can on CM. Like, you still need your 4-star Glimmer, whatever saves items first, but then I think your first big item should be an Ags. So the shard now gives you Crystal Clone. Crystal Maiden slides backwards 275 units, creating a crystal clone of herself in her place. Whenever the clone times out after 5 seconds or is destroyed, the current level of Frostbite is applied on all enemies within 300 radius. It's untargetable, but can be damaged with AoE effects. It's got 150 health. Mana cost is 50, cooldown 12. This is weird. Like, she goes like Mortal Kombat Sub-Zero and zips backwards and leaves a clone behind. I don't know what to think of this. I think it's definitely worse than the old shard. Old shard was god tier. But this might be good. Like, if it goes off, it's a AoE route. So yeah, it's just, that sounds pretty good. And I guess it does give her a little bit more mobility, and this hero lacks mobility, so that's nice. Darkseer, Vacuum, radius decreased. Early on, same late game. Surge is cheaper early, okay. And Normal Punch, distance for max power increased, so you need to run further to get the strongest Normal Punch. Honestly, I thought the hero would be hit a bit harder. He was played a lot at Riyadh. Dark Willow, Bedlam, one of her 2 ultimates, is now a 900 range ally targeted ability that can target herself. If casted an ally, Jex travels to the ally. Jex is the name of a little pixie imp thing that shoots you. So Jex travels to the ally at 1800 speed and spins around them for the duration. So you can basically put Bedlam on your ally who's going in. So your Blink Initiator, Bedlam them, they jump in, they stun, they have Jex machine gunning people. Willow sounds really, really good. And she was already kind of broken in Turbo because you can just rush an Ags and just go Ags, Moonshot, and machine gun people to death. And now your slightly weaker early game is even stronger. She is going to destroy Turbo Pubs. Dawnbreaker. Base armor increased by 1, taking no damage. Starbreaker, cost point decreased, that's good. Agnum Shard no longer improves it because it's just now part of the ability, okay. Solar Guardian, the stun now pierces debuff immunity, another big buff. So her talents, the hammer slow increased by 1%, kind of meaningless, and the swipe smash damage +2, so that's what, 6 extra damage on her full combo. Yeah, I think this one is the biggest one. This one's nice. The rest are meh. I don't think the heroes changed too much overall. Dazzle. Shadowgrave mana cost decreased by 10 at all levels. Shadowwave mana cost decreased. Agnum's Scepter upgrade can now bounce between allies and enemies regardless of who it is cast on. Okay, so before you could do the inverse shadow wave with Ags, that was the opposite and bounced on enemies only, and now with an Ags, it sounds like all of your shadow waves can just bounce between allies and enemies. So I think that sounds really, really good, honestly. I think if you rush an Ags on Dazzle and Turbo, it's good. Bad Juju. Instances of health cost increase now stack independently of each other. The health cost increase duration decreased from 30, 25, 20 to 20. So just seems like a straight up buff. Okay. I think the first one means that they don't refresh the stack duration. They each have their own, each stack has its own timer. It lasts 20 seconds. So you can't get to infinite stacks anymore by infinitely refreshing it. You'll cap out eventually. So level 10 talent, no more attack speed. You get 300 poison touch attack range. And you lose a 350 attack range here and get the 60 attack speed. Carry Dazzled is just better. Like, I think the heroes are already kind of strong in Turbo, and I think he's just stronger. I don't know if he's going to be picked in Pro Game Store, but maybe. DP +5 movement. Hero was so slow. 825 is so slow. Spirit damage is increased by a little bit. And then the 20 talent, the Spirit Siphon move speed slow, is replaced with Crypt Swarm applies 50% slow for 1 second. I think this is a bit better because now you can just spam the Crypt Swarm from far away without putting yourself at risk. Whereas before, if you want to get in and slow someone with Spirit Siphon, you put yourself in a little bit of danger. Disruptor. Oops, did not mean to do that. And now we're right at the top of the patch. Whoops, sorry guys. Video is ruined. Okay, we're back. Disruptor. If the target is trapped inside kinetic field, Thunderstrike now hits all other enemies inside the field. Okay. So that's a pretty big buff to Disruptor. Like before, they could stand at opposite ends of the field and not get hit by Thunderstrike, but now everyone in the field is just getting Thunderstruck. Yeah, Thunderstruck. And because of that, they take away the strike radius and give you +10 strike damage per strike. Nice buff. Heroes, probably not that much different, not too much better, but it's nice. And now we get to Doom. Okay. So, Scorched Earth, now upgraded by Ag's Shard. Heals Doom and controlled units for 6% of the damage values. Back in the day, this was just part of the ability, and I think it used to heal for 100% of the damage values. And now you need to buy a shard for it. And now you lose the extra stun on the Infernal Blade shard, but you get a tiny bit of stun back. This sucks. This shard was really good. It used to do a lot of damage, a long stun. I guess the healing helps you survive longer in fights now, which is nice, but this is a nerf. Doom no longer applies mute. Now makes the target unable to be healed. DPS increased from 30-60 to 30-70. Okay. And cooldown decreased by a little bit. Okay, let's read the talents and we'll get back to Doom. So you also don't get the 35-second Doom cooldown. You now get plus 1.8 Infernal Blade damage at level 20. And you lose the 2.1% Infernal Blade damage, and you get Doom applies mute. So at level 25, you have to choose between breaking and muting someone. Where's his talents? How do you see it here? Oh, it's over there. Yes, you have to choose between Doom applies break or Doom applies mute. Mute stops them using items. So now that Doom can't mute by default, someone can just BKB and run away. They can force staff away. They can yield themselves. They can glimmer. They can shadow blade. They can literally just TP home if you don't have a stun to stop them. So at first glance, this seems like a huge nerf to Doom, because one of the biggest aspects of Doom was their spells and items are just turned off. Now their spells are turned off. They can still use their items, but they can't be healed. So in some ways this is much worse, because they can get off BKB and just ignore all the other disabled in the fight, but they still silence through BKB. So it still screws certain heroes a lot. And the healing prevention against some heroes, it's really, really good. Like Alchemist, for example. Before, if he popped Chemical Rage and then you doomed him, he literally didn't care. He just kept running around hitting you. Sure, he couldn't cast his stun and the acid spray, but he could still run around and hit you and regen up and just be unkillable. Now, you doom an Alchemist after he pops Chemical Rage, he gets no healing. Sure, he can BKB and, I don't know, hex you and abyssal you and stuff, but he's gonna die. He's gonna die super fast. So I don't know how to feel about this. It's better in some ways and worse in some ways. Like, sure, they can just TP out of Doom, but if they're low enough, they go to Fountain, they can't heal, they still die to Doom. Or they get denied, which sucks, but yeah. So for most of the game, this is just straight up worse. Then when you get to level 25, if you want, you can get mute, and then Doom mutes and prevents healing. And if you get to level 30, it applies break as well. So at level 30, if you doom a guy, it's literally an FU button to that guy. He can't do anything. And in Turbo, that does happen. In Turbo, you usually get to 25 on Doom. You sometimes get to 30. So ultra late game, like Doom is stronger, but for the majority of the game, I think he's situationally stronger, situationally weaker. Like, the heroes he counts look different now. Like, some heroes are the same, like Leshrac. He still hates being silenced. That doesn't change. And now he won't heal from his Bloodstone. So that is a buff in that regard. And for heroes like Abaddon and Alchemist, they can't heal at all now, so dooming them really hurts. But for some heroes, like, I'm trying to think, like, I don't know. There were some heroes who just didn't really care about Doom, or they didn't care about being silenced, but they cared about not being able to use their items. And now they can still use their items, so Doom is worse for those. Like against Medusa, it's worse because now she can still Manta, BKB, use whatever else she wants, and she doesn't care about healing anyway, so Doom's still bad. We'll see how this pans out. The lower cooldown is nice, although you don't get the minus 35, which was more cooldown reduction in the end. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I want to play Doom and see how it feels. I think some heroes are really going to hate Doom, and they're not always going to be the heroes who were before. Like Alchemist is the best example of a hero who didn't care about Doom before, and now it hurts him. Okay, Dragonite. Dragontail cast range during Dragon form increased from 400 to 450. Okay, sorry, going back to Doom. This also makes it much better against heroes like Oracle, Abaddon, Dazzle, Winter Wyvern. Anyone had a heal and wanted to heal the ally who was doomed, now can't. So in that regard, it is a buff. But yeah, moving on to Dragonite. Dragontail more cast range in Dragon form, it's good. Out of Dragon form, gets more move speed and more corrosive breath damage. Nice, just buffs to the hero. And the 20 talents 10% better. Hero is a bit underwhelming at the moment. I don't know if this is enough to make him good, but he appreciates it. Drow Ranger. Glacier. While on Glacier, marksmanship now isn't disabled by enemies in the proximity. Drow Ranger can now freely walk off the glacier over the barrier. These are pretty big buffs. Like if someone actually climbs on the glacier with you, you still have marksmanship. You can still tear through a morphling, for example. And that's a big buff because Drow's biggest weakness is heroes that could get on top of her and just cut her down. But now she can man-fight them. Like the morphling matchup it went both ways. If Drow's hitting Morph, she tears him apart, but Morph can get on top of her and destroy her. And now, if he gets on top of her, she still destroys him. And also, she can freely walk off the glacier over the barrier, which is a huge buff as well. So now someone has to walk all the way around the glacier and climb up, try and hit her, and then she just walks off the front. And then they have to walk all the way back around to the front, try and hit her. So yeah, this ability is way better. Level 25 talent, multi-shot waves decreased from 3 to +1, but it no longer increases the total channel time, making all waves faster. I think that's a nerf overall, but faster waves are good. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break here, but I'm just going to put a cut in the video so you guys shouldn't notice anything. Okay, my throat is rested, I've got a new cup of Coke in front of me, let's carry on. Earth Spirit, Bold Smash. More damage to creeps, he farms better, this is good for him. Rolling Boulder. Earth Spirit completely untargetable and vulnerable while rolling. He's still vulnerable during the delay after cast. This is a huge buff, honestly. It makes him more like the other spirit heroes, like a Storm, Ember, Void Spirit, where they get invulnerability when they zipping and dashing and jumping around. And this is maybe what it needs to come back into the meta, because he's the only spirit hero who's currently not popular. And he gets more Spell Amp at level 10, and that is quite a bit more damage and duration on Magnetize. It doesn't look like a lot because it's 5%, but it's 5% damage and then 5% more duration, so it's what is it, 5 times 5, 7.5% bonus damage overall, I think. Quick maths, probably wrong. Here, these buffs are good. Earthshaker got a buff in time for TI, so he gets a bit more attack range on Enchant Totem, And more aftershock radius. This is a nice one, because you can catch more people with Echo Slam when you blink in, because it's an instant cast. And the issue is the Echo Slam AoE is bigger than the aftershock AoE. So sometimes you catch people with Echo Slam but don't actually stun them with aftershock. ET, slight nerf. Ember, Flame Guard, radius increase, so it does damage to more people further away. Fire Element, ooh, that's a big one. And on the activate Fire Element, so when you cast it and when he activates it, it takes a little bit longer. These numbers are small, but going from taking 0.2 seconds to 0.4 seconds overall, it means that someone can maybe get a stun or a nuke or a silence in there before he zips away. But the Agnum Shard is also nerfed, the burn radius is decreased, and it only starts dealing damage once the remnant stops moving. So if you throw the remnant at someone, it doesn't cancel their blink as soon as it gets near them. This one is a buff, everything else is pretty big nerfs to Ember. Ench, base damage decreased. It's a nerf. Enchant, Agnum Scepter increases number of max enchant creeps by 1, which was the previous shard upgrade. Okay. Is that it? Oh, and you... okay, so Scepter gives you 1 more creep and little friends now. It used to be given by the shard, I think. Or maybe it always was a Scepter upgrade. No. Sproink used to be the Scepter. So little friends and the enchanted creeps were shard, now they're the Scepter upgrade. And now also roots a target in place for 2 seconds, plus 0.5 for each creep in range when cast on up to a maximum of 5 seconds. So if someone's surrounded by creeps, you can root them for 5 seconds while all of those creeps attack them with bonus attack damage. Oh, I think it's attack speed actually. But yeah, this Scepter sounds really good in the right lineups, or against the right heroes. Yeah, like if you use it against a Chen or a Beastmaster, just destroys them. Untouchable attack slow decreased early on, still the same late game. Sproink is now part of the shard instead of the Scepter, and it only hits 2 targets instead of 3, and they have to be close together, and cooldown increased. Yeah, this was kind of weak. It was always kind of weak as a Scepter upgrade, but as a shard upgrade I think it's really good. Enigma. Demonic Conversion no longer cast on units, and is now a no target ability that summons 3 Eidolons. 100 units left right behind Enigma. And now costs health in addition to its mana. Oof. So Demonic Conversion was a really good spell because you could cast on your own creeps in the laning phase and effectively deny them for full health, so the enemy team gets 1 less creep of experience and gold, and you get your little eniglets. But now you don't get to deny creeps with it. You have to pay health, and it just spawns the Eidolons near you. So the only buff is that you don't need a creep to make Eidolons, but everything else about this ability is just so much worse. And you now also can't insta-kill enemy creeps if you want to during a team fight, so yeah, rough. Enigma is no longer a powerful laner. I think his lane is just really, really bad now. But not Pounce, damage info decreased from 1 to 0.5, total damage unchanged. Slightly better against TA, I guess. I don't know if there's anywhere else where it comes up. Eidolon attack speed decreased as well. Enigma, rest in peace, buddy. This hero is massively nerfed. Faceless Void. -1 second time walk cooldown replaced with 50 time lock damage, and then 70 time lock damage replaced with 1 second. So overall it's a nerf, but you get the damage sooner, so it might be slightly better. Like when you get level 20, it's worse, but having the damage sooner might help you kill dudes in chrono, and it might actually be a buff. Phantom's Embrace. Now refreshes when the Phantom reaches Grimstroke rather than the moment rain damage is dealt. And the projectile speed is increased. I think this fixes the thing where you could sometimes get 2 Phantoms at a time. Like, there was a way to get 2 Phantoms at a time, and I think this prevents it. I'm not 100% sure. And now Inkswell, buff duration increased from 3 to 5 seconds. Okay. Can now be detonated via the Ink Explosion sub-ability at any time to end it with an explosion, and the sub-ability replaces Inkswell for the duration of the buff. Max stun duration increased early on, same late game. Same, yeah. Cast range increased at all levels. Okay. So this is interesting. Yeah, so now if someone's going to TP away or get away, you can actually get a very quick stun. So that's a buff. I think this is just buffed overall, it's just better. And now 40 pieces debuff immunity on Soulbound. Yeah, this hero is just better. I think this is a nerf, but everything else is better. Gyrocopter. Rocket Barrage grants Gyro slow resistance for the duration. Huge buff. He can just run people down. And he was really, really good at this. Now, Flak Cannon radius increased by 250. That's a big amount. It grants 200 night vision. That's insane. And the side gunner now attacks an additional target while it's active. Carry Gyro is back, I think. Like, I think this might put him back to being like a good stable carry. Because there was a time where he was just like the default carry. When you don't know what to pick, you pick Gyro. At the moment he's really bad, but he might be coming back. Hoodwink. Hate this hero. Scurry. Now provides attack and cast range when activated. Does not doubly apply to Acorn shots, so you only get 200 cast range, not 200 cast range plus 200 attack range on Acorn shot. Okay. That's annoying. Sharpshooter now deals half of the damage to creeps that bolt flies through. So it's just a buff. She can farm while assassinating someone. And the Scepter now also increases its projectile and charge speed by 25. Which used to be the 20 talent, and now it's replaced with 125 max damage. Buffs to the squirrel. I don't like to see it. It's an annoying hero. Huskar, Life Break now additionally slows the target's attack speed, so not just their move speed, but their attack speed too, by a huge amount. That's a massive nerf. Like if Huskar jumps you, you either need to have some way to protect yourself and get away, or you can't fight him. Invoker, this is a big one. Oh god, that's a lot. So as a universal hero, his base health regen is increased, his damage is decreased because he's universal. So this is important. This is a little bit important because his mana goes down, but his damage on level 1 is decreased by a tiny bit. Like, I think 2 Ironwood branches already compensates for that. And the damage per level is increased by quite a lot. Okay, Quas. Strength per level decreased by 1. No longer grants health regen, and now gives you spell lifesteal per orb cast. The value is stored at the moment spell cast and cannot be changed by swapping orbs after. Orb spell life still works at 1/5 strength on creeps, does not affect items. Does not affect, okay. So you don't get the spell life steal on Dagon and Shivas and stuff. Wix, same thing with the Agi, 2-1. No longer grants attack speed. Now gives you cooldown reduction per orb on abilities and items. Same thing with the value being stored at cast, can't be changed after. Exhort, the intelligence is decreased to 1, no longer grants damage. Now grants spell amp. Okay. Only abilities, does not affect items. Okay, so looking at these three things, they've changed the way the hero works quite a lot. He's universal, so he gets base damage from stats, which is good for Invoker because he already built things like Ags, Scythe of Ice, big stat items that normally give him a little bit of damage, now give him quite a lot of damage. And even Spirit Vessel got buffed to take a lot of stats, so I think it's a big buff to Invoker just from being universal. He doesn't get the health regen and attack speed and damage anymore, but I don't think he needs those as much because the stats compensate for it. Now instead, if he wants to lifesteal, he can go to Quas. If he wants to get cooldown reduction, he goes to Wex. If he wants to get Exhort, he goes to Spell Amp. So if you, for example, want to do a meatball combo, it now makes the skill ceiling higher because you invoke meatball, and then you click triple exhort, and then you cast it to get more spell amp. Because if you just leave it on, I think it's 2 exhort and 1 wex for meatball, then you get slightly less spell amp. Or if you want the cooldown reduction, you set up the meatball and then go triple wex, and you get cooldown reduction. So you probably want to use Spell Amp for things like Sunstrike, for the Meatball, or for Deafening Blast. The cooldown reduction you probably want to use for things like Alacrity. Like you invoke Alacrity, you invoke, I don't know, maybe Ghost Walk, then you go triple Wex, Alacrity, Ghost Walk. Or Cold Snap. Yeah, you want Cold Snap to have more cooldown. So you first invoke your spell, then you can choose which buff you want on it, be it Spell Amp, cooldown reduction, or lifesteal. I think the lifesteal is the weakest one, but if you get gone on, it's still good. Like someone jumps you and brings you down to like 20% health, and you quickly invoke Deafening Blast, go triple Quas, Deafening Blast him, heal up a bunch, then invoke Ghost Walk and run away. It's definitely going to make good Invoker players have even more ability to do what they wanted. I think this is a buff. We'll probably see the win rate drop initially, just because a lot has changed and it's complex, and we haven't even gotten to the abilities, which also are all changed. But yeah, being universal, big buff for him. I think these, like, it might hurt his lane a bit not having that free bonus damage from Exhort, but he gets bonus damage from being universal, and now he can go the Quaswex build and still have a lot of base damage for last hitting. So I think there's a buff overall. Okay, so Cold Snap heals Invoker every time it procs. Cooldown is decreased. Oh, the freeze cooldown, so that's not the Cold Snap cooldown, it's the cooldown between the actual snaps of the Cold Snap. And the mana cost is decreased because he has less mana now. This is a huge buff to this ability. Really, really good. Ghost Walk grants Invoker up to 80 health regen and up to 40 mana regen. Like late game, he just doesn't need to go to the fountain. He just Ghost Walks and walks place to place and is just full health and mana all the time. This is insane. This is amazing. Tornado, better lift early. Yeah, early on it's got more lift duration. Late game the same. Mana cost decreased. Alacrity, mana cost decreased. Damage increased on Sunstrike. Plus, you can put Spell Amp on it, so you can do a ton of damage with Sunstrike. Like just 1 point goes from 120 damage to 200 plus 21% Spell Amp. So what is that, a 242 damage nuke at level 1? That's insane. And Deafening Blast, a lot less mana. Yeah, the Invoker buffs are pretty huge. The hero needed it. He's been kind of crap for a while, but I think this might be a bit much. Invoker players rejoice. Io, the Wisp. Shard no longer gives spell amp, and now gives 30% slow resistance. Does that apply to the tethered hero as well? I think so, because the spell amp applied to both of them, so yeah, if you IO link up to someone and you have a shard, it's more difficult to slow both of them. So that's... The spell amp was really nice with things like Leshrac. So IO Lesh is weaker, but some of the older traditional IO buddies like Stardar, Sven, Tiny, they're going to like this a lot more than the spell amp. Jakiro, Agnum Scepter, no longer increases macropire distance. Now increases the width by 70. The duration is decreased from plus 15 to plus 5. And it now adds 2 wards of ice along the edges of macropire that slow any enemy trying to cross them by 70%. Damage is pure and the slow pierces debuff immunity. Ice ward width is 80, slow linger duration. This is really good. The new scepter sounds really good. So you throw the macropire and on either side there's an ice wall that slows them. I assume it's going to be like Invoker's ice wall. Something similar to that, where you try and walk through it and you just get super slow and it takes forever. So you just get stuck in the macropire. Ag sounds insane on Jakiro. I think rushing one early is actually viable, especially in turbo. And it's going to be scary to teamfight into. Because before you could just walk out of macropire and you take a bit of damage, no one cares. Now you're going to be stuck in there for a long time. And it's wider, so it's more difficult to walk out just from that. Jakiro, Ags, Giga buffed. Juggernaut, 1 second Blade Fury duration replaced with 100 Blade Fury DPS. And the Blade Fury DPS is minus 3 Blade Fury cooldown. This is not bad. You get more damage early on. And yes, you don't stay immune as long, but in some ways it was a detriment because sometimes you wanted it to end so you could Omni Slash. So now the duration is the same all the time. You can just use it more often if you want to. So I think it's a buff. This, however, is a nerf. Yes, he gets 10% more lifesteal from Blade Dance, but it's calculated after armor and other reductions. This talent used to be like weird and buggy and broken. Like you'd hit someone and the life, all other lifesteal is reduced by armor, mana shield, barriers, all sorts of damage reduction. This one just ignored all of that and just healed you a shit ton. So this is quite a big nerf. But I think the Blade Fury stuff's a buff overall. Kotal of the Light, Chakra Magic. Mana Restore decreased by a little bit. And Mana Restore and Cool Reduction are now 25 more effective when cast on self. So he's worse at manaing up allies, but better at manaing himself. Kunkka Torrent. Damage and slow are now applied to all enemies in the torrent area throughout the duration. Not just... Oh, this is interesting. So if you use torrent and it hits a guy, and then someone runs through it afterwards, they're not stunned, but they still get slowed by it. Before they wouldn't have been. So with the... I think the Ags, the Torrent Storm, this is really, really powerful. Because even if you miss someone with a torrent, there's just so many torrents going around that they're going to be slowed. And then cast point decrease, nice buff. Legion Commander, base strength decreased by 2, movement speed decreased by 5. Not massive nerfs, but it hurts. Let's track. Mana cost decreased? They're buffing this? I mean, it's 5 mana at each level, so it's not a lot, but... I guess the hero's nerfed enough just by nerfing Io, because in Pro Dota he was only ever picked, or almost only picked with Io to get the IO combo. But now you don't have IO given him Spell Amp, so here's a bit worse. And 25 talent, Lightning Storm bounces twice, replaced with Pulse Nova triggers Lightning Storm. Every 2 seconds it casts a single bolt on a random enemy prioritizing heroes. This is the old Ags. I think it's nice to talent. The other level 25 of the double bounce was kind of weird. Nobody took it. This one might be good. It's good for running people down because you can just turn on Pulse Nova, chase after them, and they're slowed by lightning and you don't have to waste time casting it. Lich is getting the Undying treatment, and he's getting Chain Frost on Death at level 20. Yeah. I mean, this comes up in turbo, supports to reach level 20. And if he just dies in the middle of a team fight, this is a lot of damage, especially if he gets off the first chain frost before he dies. So yeah, I think it's buff. Lifestealer, Nikes. More damage, more HP, and at level 25, defeats Lifesteal, now does Lifesteal and damage. Thank you. He needed this for so long. The level 25 talent was so bad. It only healed you. It didn't increase the damage you did with Feast. It was one of the worst 25 talents in the game. Now it's pretty good. So yeah, nice buff to this hero. He needed it. Lina. Dragon Slave, the damage is decreased from 85. So 10 at level 1 and 25 at level 4. But it now also burns enemies, dealing 10, 20, 30, 40 damage per second for 2 seconds. So that's 20 to 80 damage. So in reality, this is 95 to 380 damage that she does total with Dragon Slave. So this is a buff. Plus it's better against things like TA and yeah. Nice buff to Lina. Normally damage over time isn't as good as burst damage, but this is quite a lot of extra damage over time and I think it's good. It's worth it. Night Strike Array mana cost decreased early. Much more later though. That hurts. And Laguna Blade now supercharges Lina, granting her 10 stacks of Fiery Soul for 5 seconds. This is weird and interesting because I think Fiery Soul, let me check this. I think it also gives Spell Lamp now. So Fiery Soul, it's attack speed bonus and move speed bonus. Okay, the Shard gives her 20 more damage for each Fiery Soul charge. So if you have Shard, you now want to go Light Strike Array, Laguna, and then Slave. Actually, hang on a sec, let me read this Shard again. So her ability to deal 20 more damage. Does that apply to the damage over time for the Dragon Slave? If it does, the Shard is really good. If it doesn't, the Shard is still pretty good. Because now you can get those, what is it, 10 stacks? Yeah, so you get 200 damage on your Dragon Slave just for casting Laguna Blade. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then you can just hit them super fast. So even if you haven't had time to build up your stacks on creeps, if you just go Light Strike Array, Laguna, Dragon Slave combo, you can now machine gun people again. Lina is back on the menu. Lion, Mana Drain no longer has a mana cost. It's kind of weird that it did in the first place. You need mana to get mana. Now you don't. Now you can just get mana for free. And it can now target allies without the level 15 talent. And it grants them bonus move speed. And it no longer drains mana from Lion when the ally targets at full mana. Movement speed and mana restored are decreased by 50% of the slow and mana stolen values. So now you can just, from level 1 mana drain, just cast it on ally, give them mana, give them move speed. Because apparently what we need in this world is more Storm and Letrak batteries. pretty huge buff. So obviously that's not his 25 talent anymore, and he gets -2 hex cooldown, which is nice. And the 20 talent instead of the hex cooldown, you get Earth Spike affects a 30-degree cone. So yeah, it's more easy to stun multiple people, I guess. I don't know how good this is. I'll have to see it in game, but 30 degrees is quite big. Yeah, Lion buffed. Okay, here's a big one. Here's a huge one. Spirit Bear. Lone Druid. The bear is now a universal creep hero unit. It has 0 base attributes, does not gain them with level, but any attributes received from buffs or items affect the bear as they would for universal heroes. The bear cannot gain experience, but their health and damage increase with Lone Druid's level by 90 and 5 respectively. And it now has its own Ag, Scepter, and Shard upgrades. Okay, we'll get to that. Let's talk about the universal thing first. So before, the bear was weird. Because it was a creep, it didn't get any benefits from attributes. It only got benefits from flat stats like damage, armor, health, and mana. If you give it strength into agility, it got nothing. So this now gives the bear a lot more items it can go into. Like you can now get Scuddy on the bear and it's not completely garbage. If you get a Hex on the bear, then it gets a lot of damage. If you get the Ags on the bear, it gets damage and HP and mana and attack speed and armor from it. So this sounds like a massive buff to the bear. So let's read its Scepter and Shard upgrades. The Scepter allows Spirit Bear to attack at any range from Lone Druid and to survive if Lone Druid dies. So it basically says, you know what, you're your own hero now. You're a strong independent bear, you don't need no druid. The Shard gives the active ability Fetch. Okay. He roots the target or rune and uncontrollably drags them towards Lone Druid for 2.25 seconds. The bear is slowed by 20% during this, and the target is gradually dealt 300 damage over the duration if it's an enemy. The bear is not slowed while fetching a rune. 30-second cooldown, 75 mana. Seems like a good ability. Like someone's trying to run away, you just tell the bear to fetch and it drags him back. I wonder how this works with the Tormentor. Like, I guess the bear just counts as another hero that the Tormentor can randomly go to. How does it do the net worth thing though? That's going to be interesting to see. Spirit Link, now fully upgradable by Ag Scepter. Lone Druid severs the link to a Spirit Bear and connects the targeted ally hero, sharing the Spirit Link bonuses with them for 20 seconds. Armor share and attack speed bonuses are increased by 35%. Damage done by the ally heals Lone Druid as well as the other way around. The Spirit Bear is feared for the duration of the transformation, unless he has his own scepter. And I think he still has the old shard. I don't know what the old shard was. What was his old shard? Oh, the Savage Roar. Okay, yeah, it applies a basic disbound grant allies in the area around the cast of bonus move and attack speed. Okay. So yeah, so you kind of want to get Ags on the bear before you get Ags on Lone Druid. And then it just lets him connect his Spirit Link to other heroes if they need it. And let the bear do its own thing. And True Form no longer increases base attack time, which means he doesn't attack slower in True Form. So he just gets tankier and has no downsides, I think. Okay. Lone Druid is massively buffed. I think the hero is going to see a comeback. Not in Turbo and pubs, but in Pro Dota. Yeah, and I think now ultra late game 12 slotted Lone Druid is definitely the strongest hero in the game. Luna, Aglam Shard removed from Lucent Beam, and Moonglaves now has it. And when activated, grants 4 Moonglaves that rotate around Luna for 6 seconds, reducing any damage he takes by 20%. If the glaive hits an enemy unit, deal 7% 75% of Luna's attack damage once per its revolution. This sounds really, really good. Like, it just makes her tankier, increase the amount of damage she does. Like, if she's man-fighting a melee hero, she just pops this, and it spins around, shredding them and making her take less damage. Really powerful, I think. Like how fear no longer affects creep heroes. It still affects regular creeps, I believe, but now the bear doesn't get feared. And Warlock, Golem, and Visage Birds, I guess, are the other creep heroes. And then the 10 talent is changed to +2 Howl armor reduction. And Summoned Wolves' health increased by 50 at level 15. Overall, probably a slight buff. Magnus, Horn Toss, now stuns enemies for the duration of the airtime. Broken. They want him to be picked at TI. This is us for saying, I want TI to be Magnus and Earthshaker show. And then slight buff to level 15 talent. Marcy is also got a big rework here. So Aghanim Shard decreased rebound by 3 seconds. Nice. Flat buff. Sidekick is reworked. Buff is now permanent for Marcy and her ally, dispellable only upon death or buffing another ally. Marcy's lifesteal now also heals her ally, and the ally's lifesteal heals Marcy. If Marcy and her ally are further apart from each other than 2,500 units, she receives 50% of the bonus, while the ally receives no bonus from the buff until they get closer again. Bonus damage decreased from this, so late game, from 65 to 48. So less damage for both of them. The lifesteal is quite a bit less as well, 45 to 25. And is now reduced by 40% versus creep. So the ability is weaker, but it's always active. And actually, if both heroes are hitting, it's like if they both had 50% lifesteal, because they're both getting each other's lifesteal as well. So in a team fight, if you have two right clickers, well, Marcy and another right clicker hitting people, it's more lifesteal, I think. The damage is less, but it lasts longer because it's permanent now. So over a long fight, it's probably more bonus damage overall. And the cooldown is increased because they don't want you swapping it all the time. This is a nerf to mid Marcy, but I think it's a buff to side lane carry Marcy and off lane Marcy and position 4 Marcy. We'll have to see how it plays out, but I think in the long run it's a buff overall. It's just less good for solo carry Marcy. Like, if your mid hero is at Leshrac or something and your carry is Marcy, then this is a nerf, because Leshrac's not going to be hitting people. But if you have two right clickers on your team, Marcy and another hero, then this is a buff. Unleash no longer slows attack speed as towers. Why did it do this ever? Weird. So that's a nerf. And then rebound cooldown is now part of the shard and is replaced with plus 10% rebound movement speed bonus. And the 25 talent, the debuff immunity is gone from sidekick, and it's now plus 65 sidekick damage. That's a lot. Losing this sucks because it was a really powerful talent, but yeah, we'll have to see. I'm not sure if Marcy's better overall or worse. I think on average it's just easier to use though. Mars the Impaler. So, Bulwark, the Aghanim Scepter soldiers are now placed in a war formation with 2 of them on either side of Mars. Soldiers attack only enemies in front of them and knock back any enemy they hit. They push 375 range from the formation. I don't know, I still think the Scepter is weird. I don't know if it's good. Medusa, Mana Shield buffed at level 25. That's quite a big buff. The problem is, for Medusa, you always get the other talent. The split shot uses modifiers, because that gives you Skadi on each attack, crit on each attack, Mjolnir proc on each attack, MKB on each attack. The other 25 talent is just so much better. But if you get to level 30, which happens in Turbo, Medusa's unkillable. So yeah, it's don't go late game against Medusa buff, which you probably shouldn't have done already. So Meepo, strength gain decreased a little bit, agile gain decreased a little bit, base int decreased by 2. But he gets more strength from the talent, and the 15 talent Earthbound grants True Strike on targets, replaced with minus 2.5 Earthbound cooldown. And then at 20, the Earthbound cooldown is replaced with a 2 True Strike. This is probably a buff overall, because the True Strike's only good in a few games if you're against Wind Ranger or PA or something like that. Whereas this is good every game, so it's better to get it early. Morana. Max bonus damage decreased at the early level, same late. Leap charge is much longer early and 2 seconds less late game. Hey. Yeah, I think overall slight nerfs. Buffs for Turbo because you level faster in Turbo. Monkey King, the shard now applies Primal Spring where Monkey King lands, with 50% power of the max channel duration. So that is really good. Because what you can do now, I've done this again. Okay, so what you basically can do is you use Primal Spring, you jump in, you immediately jump back into a tree, then you smack them with the stick, what's it called? His Q. You smack them with the Q, and then you spring back and get another nuke. Boundless Strike, sorry. So yeah, you Primal Spring in, jump back to a tree, Boundless Strike, and then jump in, hit them with another 50% power Primal Spring. It's a lot of damage. This is just straight up buff. I mean, it's just more damage when you use it, so it's buff. I still don't think you buy this, you probably just get it from the Tormentor, but it's a buff. Wukong's command, cooldown decreased by a little bit early on, same late game. Morphling, the Scepter's reworked, thank you. Morphling was picked a lot in pro games because his Scepter basically just made the enemy carry useless. Like, not only do you buff yourself, but you render the enemy carry useless and you just win the game because you're the strongest hero in the game now. So now it adds an alternative class to Morph, and when the alternative class is enabled, Morph creates beside himself a strong illusion of the target hero that can cast all of the hero's basic abilities and deals 100% of the target's damage, but only takes 300% damage. If the illusion is alive when Morph toggles Morph, he teleports the illusion and destroys it before turning into the enemy hero. So it's like the old Replicate, but better. Because now you can have Morphling plus the enemy hero, the enemy carry, fighting side by side. Both of them can cast their spells. You kill the enemy, then you go one side and farm. The Replicate goes to the other side of the map and farms there. And if they try and gank you, then you just teleport the Replicate and you're safe. You're uncatchable. And if they try and gank the Replicate, then congratulations, they've ganked Illusion. This hero used to be one of the best split push rat heroes in the game because of the old Replicate, and now he gets it on Ags, so I think this is, so it's a nerf because it doesn't render the enemy hero useless anymore, so the enemy carry is still a carry, but I think it's better for Morph overall. Going to be fun to see it in pro games. It's a really high skill Ags. Muerta. If an enemy hero dies inside the calling, it gains an additional Revenant and its duration is refreshed. That is insane. Like, you put this down in a team fight, when you go on a hero and you just keep killing people and you get more and more revenants spinning around, and it lasts forever. Seems good. And the mana cost is decreased by a lot. Gunslinger secondary target bonus search range increased, so you can hit people further away. And parting shot, which is the AGS, the physical body damage reduction is decreased from 50 to 35, so it's easy to kill the body. Nice buffs to Marta. Naga Siren, base armor decreased by 1. Nature's Prophet, so Tango in the Sprout no longer heals you. And Sprout now deals damage every 0.5 seconds for the duration. So 32 damage for every 0.5 seconds, that's the same as a Radiance basically. Same DPS as Radiance. And damage is dealt in a 275 radius, so even enemies outside the trees who are near it take damage. Huge buff. Like, ganking early, they don't get a free heal from breaking out a Sprout. And mid and late game, you Sprout a dude, they can't immediately blink away. This Prophet might be back. Necro Acceptor reworked. It's now part of Heartstopper aura, and it just always passively increases the health decay of Heartstopper by 60% of his current regen. So early on it's not a lot, but you do get regen from Heartstopper when you kill creeps and reprint enemy hero. So you get like a boost then. And if you get a few kills with Reaper and you build up your regen, it's going to add up over time. And apparently also Jug's Healing Ward counts as regen, so if Healing Ward is next to you and you have an axe, you're doing like 400 damage per second with Heartstopper aura. It's actually insane. And I guess if you get a heart, this gives you a lot of damage with Heartstopper as well, so I think this is a buff overall. And it might even be worth it to get this early because it speeds up your farm speed. Instead of getting a Radiance, you now buy an Ags. And you're constantly getting regen from killing creeps with Heartstopper's passive. And that gives you more damage so you kill more creeps. I think this Ags is really good. I want to try this. Nightstalker, Crippling Fear. Now deals damage. This is the silence, right? Crippling Fear is the silence. Yeah, this is the silence. Okay, this is a big buff. Because you can Crippling Fear blink in, and their blinks immediately cancelled. So they can't blink out a Crippling Fear anymore. And just damage per second, it's more damage. And Dark Ascension now refreshes cooldowns of all non-ultimate abilities on cast. So you can basically Void, Crippling Fear, then cast your ult, and then do another Void and have another Crippling Fear ready to go. Pretty nice buffs. And more status resistance for Hunter in the Night at level 15. Quite a lot more. Nightstalker is looking good. Sneaks. Okay, let's not look at Ogre. So Spike Carapace now reflects more damage, and the cooldown is slightly worse early, better late. But Vendetta has lost a lot of damage, but the duration is increased, so that's nice. So I think now you get permanent uptime at level 2 instead of level 3, so that's good. But it's going to be harder to solo kill people. But if you manage to reflect something like Laguna Blade, this is going to hurt even more. Ogre. So Unrefined Fire Blast, less damage, but deals damage equal to your 1.5 your strength, and is affected by the level 10 talent. So probably a buff overall. This is the Ags ability. Omni Knight. Purification, cast range increased by 50. It's nice. This thing is difficult to cast. It's got a very short range. And Repel is back. No longer grants bonus strength and health regen per dispelled debuff, but instead grants the same things per debuff on the unit. Now only applies to the target and not to Omni Knight as well, and it no longer applies a strong dispel. But it now grants debuff immunity for the duration of the effect, but no magic resistance. Duration is down to 6 seconds, and the cooldown is huge. So Omni Knight went from having Heavenly Grace to basically having a free BKB again. This is how it used to be way back in the day. It doesn't dispel, which is a huge nerf to it. If someone gets like Fiend's Grip or something, or lassoed by a Bat Rider, you can't save that person anymore. But you can give them bonus strength and health regen, so yay for them. If it's stun or disabled that doesn't pierce debuff immunity, then it does save them, because if they stunned and you put this on them, then they're debuff immune, the stun no longer affects them and they can go back to doing whatever they want. So it's worse specifically against Bane and Bat Rider, but I think overall this is a buff. And I think Omni is more of a support now than a core, I'm not sure. Hero's still in a weird spot, but Repelled is back. We're going back to, what was it, like 2014, 2015 Dota? Okay, level 10, he loses the Heavenly Grace duration, it gets Purification cooldown. The level 15, which was Purification cooldown, replaced with +3 Repelled strength and regen per debuff. And then that, which was on Heavenly Grace at 20, is now +2 seconds Repel duration. So you get an 8-second BKB at level 20. That you can use on an ally to give someone a double BKB effectively, because they have their own BKB plus your Repel. This looks good as a support. Alright, cool. Purifying Flames. Heal per second increased by... It looks like very little, but it's actually quite a lot if you look at the numbers. So the total heal at level 1 is increased by 36. And later on, it's increased by, okay, that's only like, what, 9? Yeah, 9. So this is better for healing allies, but it's worse if you're trying to kill a dude and you spam Purifying Flames, because now they're going to get healed even more. OD. Aghanim's Shard, ally movement speed increased from 60 to 70. Nice little buff. Aghanim's Scepter now fully prevents the damage that would put OD below 20% health. And the max mana as barrier increased from 50 to 75. So this is that weird one where if his health drops low enough, he eats a bunch of his mana and he gets a barrier. So with an Ags, you literally cannot be 100 to 0'd anymore. Which gives you time to get off BKB and Astral yourself or do stuff. Sanity's Eclipse now applies a mana allergy debuff to enemies for 7 seconds, causing them to take damage every time they cast a spell, equal to the mana cost of the spell. And then OD is healed by 150% of mana spent by enemies, and affects items. Insane buff. Like, you just throw this down at the start of a team fight, and suddenly enemies are... It's like if you have a Pugna Ward down, but better. They're nuking themselves, and you're busy healing off it. And if it's something like a Storm, or a Leshrac, or a Timbersaw, or a Skywrath, who use a ton of mana, they're just going to kill themselves if you Sanity's Eclipse them. So, this is a nice buff, because the weakness of Sanity's Eclipse was... it did damage based on the difference between your manas, and in heroes have high mana, so they didn't take a lot of damage from it. But now, they're going to be damaging themselves by the debuff. Huge buff to OD. I think this hero is insane in team fights now. I do not look forward to seeing him in Turbo, because that hero can be broken in Turbo. Shield Crash no longer provides damage. We're on Pango now. So no longer provides damage reduction per hero to Pango, and instead gives you a barrier for 10 seconds. That's a pretty big barrier. I think the straight up buff, just way better. Because before, yes, you get reduced damage, but you still take damage, so you still have to heal it up later. The barrier, you just get a barrier, and now you take no damage, you don't have to heal it later. And depending on how much armor and stuff you have, the barrier might be more effective HP than the damage reduction. Lucky Shot no longer disarms. Good, this was bullshit. But it applies a pretty huge attack speed slow to the target. This is a little bit more fair. It still does the same thing, and it makes it harder for enemies to attack when they hit by the Lucky Shot, but it doesn't completely render them useless. Level 20 talent. Shield Crash reduction per hero replaced with plus 100 Shield Crash barrier per hero. So what, you can have a 1500 damage barrier if you hit 5 heroes. That sounds insane. Hero might actually be super tanky now. PA, Coup de Grace, reworked. So the PA refines her combat abilities, acquiring a 20% chance of gaining Deadly Focus buff with each attack. While PA is focused, her next attack will deal a guaranteed crit with the old Coup de Grace values, the same values, and consume the buff. Stifling Dagger has a 40% chance to gain Deadly Focus. The hit that lands a guaranteed crit may also activate Deadly Focus buff, making consecutive crits possible. And the buff lasts 6 seconds. So what this means is, her old ability was just 15% chance to do a big crit. Now, it's a 20% chance to guarantee a crit on your next attack. And a 40% chance if you throw a dagger to get the, and let's go down to P again. So yeah, it's 40%, too far, not too far. So it's 40% chance on dagger. So what this does is, this first a big buff in the lane. As soon as you hit level 6, you just keep last hitting like normal until you see, oh, you last hit a creep, you got the buff, throw a dagger, get a guaranteed crit. And now every single dagger you throw is going to have guaranteed crit, because you're going to keep hitting creeps until you get the buff, and then throw a dagger. And in long team fights, this is just a 20% crit chance effectively. So it's just better than an old art. The one place where it is weaker is if you're just walking between lanes and you get ganked, someone jumps on you, you can't get that first hit crit anymore, because you can at most get the second hit crit. So that is a slight downside. But I think for like sieging and team fights, you can keep throwing daggers or hitting nearby creeps until you get the buff, and then you go in and jump on someone with a guaranteed crit. This lets you guarantee that first hit crit and maybe burst a support to death. Because if you're a support and you get first hit crit by a PA, you die. You don't get time to get anything off. And that was unreliable before. Sometimes the first 2 or 3 hits didn't crit you, and you had time to glimmer yourself or go scepter or do whatever. But now the PA jumps in and insta-crits you and you're just dead. There is one downside to this. It's a buff. It's dispellable. So if you're hit by a nullifier or Shadow Demon ult, you literally can't crit for that duration. So nullifier hard counters PA unless she has a BKB, in which case They cancel each other out. But I think overall this is just straight up buff to PA, because you can keep throwing daggers as you siege until you see, I got the crit, go. Yeah, I think the hero is just way better. She effectively just has 20% crit instead of 15% crit now, and she can guarantee a crit when she goes in. Amazing buff. PL. Spread lance damage decreased by 10, and cooldown reduction decreased. Slight nerfs. Okay, Phoenix. So for Icarus Dive, Fire Spirits, and Sunray, the damage interval is decreased from every 1 second to every 0.2 seconds. So it's way, way better against Templar Assassin, and I think that's the only place where it really matters. Sunray now applies a stackable 2% mischance debuff for every tick of damage, which is every 0.2 seconds, for 5 seconds, and the debuff lasts 5 seconds. How long does Sunray last? So Sunray lasts 6 seconds. So if you get the full 6 seconds, that's 10% a second, that's 60% debuff, 6% mischance debuff for a full Sunray. And then if you have a shard, you can supernova and laser again and get them up to 120% mischance in an AoE. So this is an insane buff. Like if you get a full Sunray off on their carry and then supernova, you're not dying. And if you have a shard, then you can just keep lasering people and your supernova is unkillable. Phoenix is looking really good. I think the shard just became, it was really decent. Now it's just S tier. And don't forget, this is now nice to save allies as well. If they go on an ally, you laser both them, you heal the ally, you damage the enemy, you give mischance to the enemy, your ally lives. It's insane buff. Phoenix is one of my favorite heroes. Love this hero. Very happy about this. Primal Beast. Pulverized bonus damage per hit decreased slightly. Rock Throw now provides an uproar stack per enemy hero hit. Nice little benefit. The shard is kind of crap. People don't get it unless they get it from Tormentor. It's level 10 talent plus 5% magic resistance during trample. It's nice. 20, 1 more armor for uproar stacks. But the other level 20 talent is nerfed to less trample damage. Overall, slight buffs, slight nerfs. I think the hero is roughly in the same place. Maybe slightly worse with damage. Puck. Agnum's Shard bonus damage increased by quite a bit. I think this is the attack on phase shift. And then Dream Coil. The rapid fire attack now mirrors Puck's attack rate. So it might be slower early, but late game it's probably going to be faster. And here's the big buff. It keeps attacking enemies that are stunned by breaking the leash. Because before, I think Puck's an it or a them or I don't know, I think Puck's an it. If Puck Dream Coils a dude and they just break the leash, the rapid fire used to stop. Now it keeps going. So that's a pretty big buff. Pudka, Pudge. Now insecure illusions with Hook. And I did it again. That's a nice buff to Pudge. Okay, we've actually gone quite far. Like, now you already knew if it was illusion before based on how much damage it took, but it's nice to be able to insecure illusions with Hook. And cast stun on Pudge is now removed if the Hook finds a target. I don't play much Pudge, so I might be wrong on this, but did it again. Before, when you threw the hook, you were stunned until the enemy hero was pulled close enough to you, and then you were unstunned and you could cast your spells. Now, I think as soon as it hits the enemy and starts pulling back, you're unstunned. So you're stuck in place for less time with Pudge now. So it's just Pudge buffs all the way. Pugner. Netherward base damage increased. Okay, it's quite a big increase later on, same early. Nice buff to Pugner. Casters beware. Co-op of Pain. Shadow Strike cooldown is less early, better lane domination. Scream of Pain radius increased. It's a nice buff. And Sonic Wave, damage is increased by a lot late on. It's an extra 100 damage, it's quite a lot of damage. And it now gets gradually applied over the 1.4 second duration of the knockback, and the knockback's now undispellable. So I think that you can BKB during the knockback. It won't dispel it anymore, but it'll reduce some of the damage. So this is a slight nerf because you have time to BKB and allies have time to like pipe you and shield you and protect you in some way or heal you during the Sonic Wave. So it's slightly more difficult to burst a person, but it is more damage, so I think it's worth the trade-off. And the cooldown is decreased by 10 seconds late game, so overall I think buffs to Quap. If you can't BKB, then this is just really good. If you can BKB, then it's but Sonic Wave goes to BKB and it's pure damage, so actually BKB doesn't matter. Yeah, so this doesn't matter. So this bit here, it only really matters if someone else on the team has a heal or a save and can save you in that 1.4 seconds. Razor, the static link is now upgraded by Shard. So it increases cast range by 150 and adds alternatives cast to static link. And when toggled on, it pulls Razor and its link target towards each other at a rate of 100 units, while the link is active. The pull stops if the distance is less than 175 from Razor. Doesn't affect debuff immune units. This is an insane buff. If you get Shard, you just static link a dude. They are not getting away from you. You're faster than them. They're pulled towards you. You pull towards them. You can just stick on people so easily with Razor now. Storm Surge. Bonus speed is decreased by quite a bit, but now the previous shot upgrade is just part of the basic ability. So you have an 18% chance when attacked, and every time when targeted by a spell to release Forked Lightning that strikes the target and 2 nearby enemies, dealing quite a bit of damage, and slowing the movement speed for 1 second by quite a bit. Additional strikes prioritize the same unit type as the unit that triggered it. So if a hero triggers it, it'll prioritize other heroes and hit 3 heroes. If a creep triggers it, it'll prioritize creeps and hit 3 creeps. But if there's only 1 creep and 1 hero, then you're going to hit both of them anyway, so it doesn't matter. 700 search area, 3 second cooldown, massive buff to, or just massive buffs to all of Razor's abilities. Because he gets a new better shard, and the old shard isn't gone, it's just part of the ability for free now. Level 20 talent was from plus 21 Storm Surge move speed to plus 25% Storm Surge damage and slow. That's a lot of damage. That's a massive slow. Rikimaru. Base armor decreased. Base damage decreased. Strength gain decreased. Base agi increased a lot. Doesn't quite offset the base damage increase, but it offsets the armor decrease. So you have almost the same base damage. You have the slightly more base armor. Your strength gain is worse. Your agi gain is better by a lot. Holy shit, that is a lot. But the downside is that Cloak and Dagger agi multiplier is decreased by 0.2. But I think overall this is just more damage, so Riki buffs, I guess. He's squishier, but does more damage, so yeah, Riki buffs. Rubik, Shard, Telekinesis Shard, bonus throw range decreased to 50% from 85%. Good, this thing was stupid. And Arcane Supremacy, slightly less cast range, quite a bit less early on. Sandstorm now constantly moves towards Sand King at a speed of 100 speed of 100 move speed, not milliseconds. Agnum's Scepter Bow Strike Spine Radius now equal to 10% of Sandstorm's current radius. Okay, so this is good because yeah, so decrease from 65 to that. Level 15 talent increases radius by 12.5 more. So before, people would leave it at level 1 when they wanted to buy Scepter because you had a smaller radius and big spines, and making the radius bigger means they're less likely to get hit by spines. But now it's always 10% the radius, so it scales with your Sandstorm size, so there's no reason to leave it at level 1. This is interesting because it's kind of a buff and a nerf, because you can slowly move away from the enemy and your Sandstorm follows you, so you can escape without losing Sandstorm completely. But it also kind of reveals where in the Sandstorm you are, because it's always going to move to put you at the center of it. So enemies can see which way it's moving and know that, oh, you're somewhere on that side. It doesn't tell you exactly where, but it gives them an idea. Agnum's Shard effect now triggers every 2.5 seconds instead of every 700 units moved. So I think this would benefit from cooldown reduction instead of move speed now. So this is actually nice because now you get the pulses when you just stand installed in Sandstorm. So it's a buff, I think. And then level 20 talent is, instead of the base radius, you get base radius and incremental radius. So just buffed. Because with each pulse of epicenter, it gets bigger, and now it gets bigger with the talent. Shadow Demon, disseminate shared damage, increase from 10 to 15. Nice. Disseminate actually does a lot of damage. It's a really good spell. People don't realize how much impact it has in fights. SF, base attack range increase. That's massive. And the Scepter damage in return increased by 20%. Massive. SF's kind of in a crappy place at the moment, but I don't know if this is enough to bring him back, but it's nice. Shaman. Mana cost decreased for Aether Shock by a little bit. Hex now amplifies damage the target takes by 5, 10, 15, 20%. And the duration is also increased by a lot. 2 second stun at level 1. Mana cost is increased. Fair enough, it's almost more than double at level 1, same late. And cooldown is much more. So this is now a killed spell. This is way better. You don't use it as often because of the cooldown and the mana cost, but when you do use it, it's gonna be much more impactful. So I think this is a buff. Shackles, the total heal damage increased by quite a bit. That's a good nuke, and you heal for it. It's like a channeled brain sap that stuns. Big shaman buff. So I think the hex change might bring him back into the meta. Silencer, Glaives of Wisdom. The Shard Silence now also silences targets hit by the glaive bounces. Great, more silencing, obnoxious. Level 20 talent, the 10% glaives damage replaced with 1 glaive bounce. Instead of 2 glaive bounces, you get 25% glaive damage. Probably an overall buff. This hero is annoying in turbo. Like, he does so much damage late game. He is a monster, and I think he's even better now. Please don't pick him. I don't want him in my games. Skywrath. Arcane Bolt. The Scepter now creates 2 bolts instead of 1. Which means, yeah, okay. So we'll get to that. The 1 talent, the cooldown of Arcane Shield is less, so it's worse. And +1 Arcane Bolt replaced with 25% Arcane Bolt Spell Lifesteal. So now you need the Ags to get your 3 bolts. You don't get one for free with talents, but you get Spell Lifesteal on them, which is nice. It was kind of weird that the Ags and one of his talents basically did the same thing, so I like this change. Slaughter. Slitherine Crush. Cast point improved from 0.35 to 0.25. It's good. Puddle duration increased just to 7 at all levels. And with a Scepter, 25-second puddle. And Bash the Deep now grants you attack speed when you're in a puddle or in water. Nice buff to Slaughter. Slark. Linger duration decreased from 0.5. So this is for Depth Shroud, his shard. So when you leave it, it doesn't stay on you for 0.5 seconds, keeping you invisible longer. It now goes away almost instantly, which is good. Screw this ability. Screw this hero. Snapfire. Little Shredder, the damage per shot increased by 5. Okay, she's getting buffed. Mana cost increased by a lot, early, slightly late. So overall, this is better. It's going to be slightly more difficult to maintain the mana early on if you get it early in lane, but it's just buffed in lane. But this is where the nerf comes in. You lose the attack damage on Little Shredder at 20, and you get the 3 times multi-shot, and 3 times multi-shot at 25 is now the attack damage. So they swapped the 25 and 20 talent. So in pro games and in pubs and in turbo, this is a nerf. Like, she doesn't come online until level 25 when she starts doing massive damage, and that's a little bit too late even in turbo. Like, it's still good when she finally comes online, but this is quite a big nerf. To be fair, she does farm a little bit faster at level 20 now thanks to this. She can hit multiple creeps, but I think core Snapfire is nerfed. I don't think she's going to be played mid in Pro Dota anymore. I might be wrong. I probably am wrong. But she also got nerfed by the Atos into Gleipnir change, because she used to buy that because it gave her a ton of stats, and now it doesn't. So yeah, maybe she's not viable as a mid anymore. Yeah, we'll see. Snipper. Assassinate performs an auto attack on the target. Damage decreased by a lot. That is actually a huge nerf. But it includes his damage, which early on is like between 100 and 200, I'd say. So yeah, maybe it's not that much of a nerf. It's now also refreshed when you get a kill on an enemy, so you can just assassinate. Oh, and it's all kills by sniper, not just ones from assassinate. So if you shoot a dude, your assassinate refreshes. If they die to shrapnel or something, assassinate refreshes. And the mana cost is decreased. I guarantee people in pubs are going to rush rapier and just assassinate people, and it's going to suck. Don't do it. But like a late game rapier on sniper is legitimately terrifying. Because you can just assassinate from miles away and blow up a support. And keep doing it over and over. It's obviously... I think it's just a buff overall. Because it also procs attacks. It'll proc Mjolnir, procs Deso, MKB, and procs Headshot. So yeah, I think it's buffed to Snapper. Spectre. Base strength decreased by 2. Shadow Step is now her ultimate ability. It does 80%, 40, 60, 80% haunt damage. The haunt takes 200 damage. It lasts 5, 6, 7 seconds. Has 80, 60, 40 second cooldown. Oof. Mana cost is 150 and no longer casts a Spectral Dagger on its target. Reality now has a 3 second cooldown and now cast a Spectral Dagger on target. And Haunt is now given by a Scepter. I think these are the same values as it used to have, but the cooldown is much longer than the level 3 Haunt used to be. I think level 3 Haunt was like 140 or 120 cooldown, and now it's 180 seconds all game. Late game, this is just straight up worse. Shadow Step's longer cooldown, Haunt's longer cooldown. You can't spam reality like you used to confuse people. But it might be a buff in that now Spectre doesn't need to rush an Ags just to be able to join fights. She now has Shadow Step, which, yeah, it has a longish cooldown, but it's not as bad as Haunt was early. So now she can just go like something like Blade Mail, Diffusal Manta, instead of going Blade Mail Ags. And she can have a lot more impact early on. So yeah, I think the numbers might need to be tweaked. I think this needs a shorter cooldown. I think this might need a slight... This is probably fine level 3 alt. That's probably fine. Shadow Step might be okay. I think Haunt needs buff though. That cooldown is way too long. The other downside is that now, if you Shadow Step, it doesn't cast the dagger, so you actually have to reality in, and that casts the dagger. And you can still do the double dagger like you did before, but now you have to actually go in, and then you can't jump back for 3 seconds. So it's slightly less of a low committal spell. Now you have to actually go in if you want to get the dagger off. So that part of it is a nerf. Yeah. Also, this is better for joining fights, but now you're a much worse team fighter early mid-game. Because this used to give insane vision, showed you where everyone was, it let you get on whoever you wanted. Now you need to be able to see the person you're going on early. So yeah, I'm not sure if this is a buff or a nerf. I think the concept, in theory, it's a buff. Being able to have Shadow Step earlier on and not need an Axe for it, but I think the numbers are a bit too shit right now. But I think with a few tweaks, she could be good again. Spectre could be quite good. Spirit Breaker, Charge Darkness. Bonus speed decreased early on, same late. Level 20 talent, plus 17% greater bash chance to plus 25. That's quite a big buff. Then 25 talent is greater bash damage replaced with... Oh, hang on, sorry. This is not greater bash chance. This is greater bash damage. Okay, so you don't get more bash chance at 20. You get the old 25 talent at 20. Now your 25 talent is a better version of the 20 talent. So it's probably a nerf to have the bash chance later, but once you hit 25, it's just better. Soul Spirit, ball lightning damage decreased. Good. Nobody likes this hero. Sven, radius increased on Stormhammer. Stun more people. That's nice. And Guard Strength provides 30, 35, 40% slow resistance for the duration. Really good for this hero. He has huge issues by being kited. So yeah, this is a nice big buff to Sven. Not sure if it's enough to bring him back into being picked into the meta, but it's a start. Techies, reactive taser can now be detonated via the detonate taser sub-ability at any time. So you can end it early if you want to. And the sub-ability replaces reactive taser for the duration of the buff, but is unavailable for the first half second to prevent accidental detonation. And the cooldown is slightly longer early, slightly better late. This is just a straight up buff to techies. Because now, if you want to save an ally, you can just tase yourself and immediately detonate it and disarm the person going on your ally. Before, you had to wait for it to end to disarm someone else, or hope that they attacked you and got disarmed. So yeah, buffed techies. Psionic Trap for TA. Damage tick interval decrease from 1 to 0.5. Why does this matter? Because normally damage over time only really matters for countering TA refraction. I don't know if this means anything. Bonus damage increased from 250. Oh, it's just better at all levels. Okay. Terrorblade. Casting Metamorphosis now ends Demon Zeal prematurely. Demon Zeal is reworked and it no longer dispels him. The bonus attack and move speed increased to 100 from 65. No longer grants double bonus to melee units. Okay. Now creates a 1200 range aura around Terrorblade, which provides Demon Seal buff to his illusions. Okay. Duration increased to 30 seconds. Cooldown increased to 60. And can no longer be cast while under the effects of Metamorphosis. Casting Meta or Terror Wave ends it prematurely. So instead of this being like a thing you can use on top of Metamorphosis for a bit more damage, or use outside of Metamorphosis for double effect, it's now just, it's like a second Metamorphosis, but not quite as good. So you use this if Meta's down and you still need to fight. So I think it gives Terrorblade a bit more flexibility, which is good. He needs it. So hero is really defined by Metamorphosis. So it's good that he can have some play outside when meta's down. Tired Hunter, the big watermelon. Tendrils of the Deep, his old shard is removed, and now he gets a new shard called Dead in the Water. Tired throws a chain that leashes an enemy hero to a heavy anchor. Attempting to move more than 350 units away from the anchor reduces the hero's movement speed to 100, while dragging the anchor behind them. The anchor can be destroyed with 5 attacks. Initial chain deals 200 magic damage and has a 1000 traveled speed and can be disjointed. Okay. The ability removes invisibility and provides fog of war vision on the target. So you basically just have true sight on the target. They can't move very fast. It's got decent cast range, lasts 10 seconds, which is quite long. 25-second cooldown. This is a good ability. Like, this is just really good. I guess this is what this is referencing on the blog page. As for his talents, the 15 talent, the gush damage is decreased, so that's a nerf. But at level 20, instead of plus 40 Kraken Shell block, you get plus 4 Kraken Shell damage block per anchor smash kill. It counts every hero that dies under the effect of the debuff. You don't actually have to kill them with the anchor smash. And it's retroactive, counting kills before the talent is learned. This sounds like if you're just involved with 10 kills, it's the same as the old talent, and as the game goes on, it just scales better and better. This seems really good. You can theoretically get to infinite damage block. Yeah, nice buffs to Tired. This new ability looks awesome. Timber Saw. Base damage decreased by 3. And 7 spell amp replaced with 3% whirling death stat loss. This is a minor nerf. This is a slightly bigger nerf. Overall, the hero is not that badly nerfed. Tinker, strength gain decreased. Heat-seeking missile, mana cost increased by 10 later. Rearm, mana cost increased by 10 at all levels. Like, it's small, but it adds up because you're rearming. Like, this is one less combo in the long run. You have to go to base one combo earlier. And then level 10, 2-second laser blind replaced with plus 50 laser radius. Okay. And heat-seeking missile mini-stun decreased from 0.25 to 0.2. This is such an annoying ability. This talent is obnoxious to play against, so I'm glad it's getting nerfed. Overall, not a huge nerf to Tinker, but I think the other big nerf is the overwhelming blink change, like I mentioned earlier. So he's losing a bit of damage from that, and he's losing a combo from this, so it's a moderate nerf. Tiny, straight up buffed. Grow now gives you slow resistance, 45% at level 3. Hero gets kited when he tries to go right click, so this is a good buff. Treant. Nature's Guise now considers the grasp vines as trees, and the tree search radius is increased. So the problem with Treant was you'd throw down your Nature's Grasp, then you'd waddle out of the trees, and you lose Nature's Guise, and if you have the shard, you don't get the root. Now you can walk along the vines, stay invisible, get the root when you hit a dude. It's a really nice buff. Troll Warlord. Rampage removed. I don't even know what it did. Berserker's Rage. So now both Whirling Axe abilities are always accessible. Casting any of them automatically switches Troll Warlord to the form of usability. That's nice. So it's a slight quality of life buff. Instead of having to go toggle to the other Whirling Axe and then cast your spell, you just cast the Whirling Axe you want and it automatically toggles you from range to melee and back. Fervor is now upgradable by the shard. Increases max stacks by 4 and grants 20 plus 3% chance per fervor stack to fire an additional range attack at any unit within the range attack range. So as you're hitting, you just have a chance to throw an extra range attack. If you're only fighting one dude, I'm pretty sure it works like Muerta's passive, and you just throw your extra attack at the dude you're fighting. So this is like I think like a 30 to 40% attack damage buff overall when you're fighting one guy. And in a team fight, it's just free damage. This is really good. Shard is really powerful. You should buy it. Let's see, Tusk. Tag team now passively grants Tusk attack speed slow aura within 350 radius. That's annoying. Stat buff. Tusk is he can be obnoxious in turbo if he gets like a Deso Swords Edge and just runs around one-shotting supports. I don't think this changes too much. And I'm going to take another quick break, so once again, you won't notice anything in the video, but I'll be back. Firestorm cooldown is increased by 1 second each level. And the shard now allows targeting allies, which is really cool because Underlord's not the blink Underlord is not the blink initiator sort of hero. So being able to put Firestorm on whoever is going in is a pretty huge buff because it's a lot of damage, especially to tanky heroes. Cast point improved. Lovely. This thing takes forever to cast. This is nerfed a bit. It sucks, but I don't think it's that bad. I think this and this are pretty nice buffs. And 9, base damage decreased by 4. Cooldown increased a lot at the early levels. Same late. And mana cost decreased, so his laning is slightly worse, which is where Undyne was at his strongest. But I think the hero is still good. He still has a grab ally, which is broken in Pro Dota. Not so much in pubs, people cannot coordinate, but yeah, it's still a good hero. Agi gain increased by 0.2. Overpower grants slow resistance. That's really nice. So, okay, it's got a lot of talent changes. So level 15, the status resistance on rage is increased by 10%. Level 20, Fury Swipe's damage decreased from 12 to 10. Earthshock cooldown replaced with Earthshock radius at 20. That's a big radius. And then 25 talent, then Rage provides half benefit to allies is just gone. And it's replaced with Earthshock as 2 charges. That is super good. I think the biggest buff to Ursa is that BKB now stops Nullifier from dispelling you. Because before you'd overpower, get nullified, your overpower's gone, your hero doesn't do anything. You're just a glorified creep. Now, you BKB, you overpower, you go in, you can't be nullified, you are less prone to slows, you've got a lot of steady resistance from rage. You can actually maybe just go in and maul a dude. We'll see. I still think the hero is not that good, but he could, I think he's in a better spot now. Venge, base attack speed increased from 100 to 110. Wave of Terror also reduces the enemy's total attack damage by a lot. This is a huge buff. Like just in the lane phase, you get 1 point, 15% reduction. It's not a lot, but it's enough that they might miss some last hits and you can deny them. And this scales throughout the whole game. And this is total attack damage, not base attack damage. So if they have a Daedalus, 30% is gone. Rapier, 30% gone. This is an insanely good buff. Okay, Nether Swap at level 10, the talent. Nether Swap enemy damage increased from 150 to 200. The Wave of Terror armor reduction increased from 3 to 4. So just straight up buffs to Venge. I think this is going to shove us straight into the meta. This is just such a huge buff. The Wave of Terror. Venomancer. Poison Sting health regen decreased from 20 to 15. It's pretty much inconsequential, I think. Viper. Viper Strike duration increased by 1. Attack slow increased. Okay, so the level 1 slow is now as good as the old level 3 slow. That is insane. The damage per second is decreased by a little bit. But you get 1 extra second, so it's actually more damage overall. The projectile speed is increased. Viper Strike is just so much better. That is an insane attack speed slow. And Nosedive, it's such a derpy ability. Cast range is increased by 100. And 11 save, and the 25 talent for minus 11 second Nether Toxin cooldown is replaced with Become Universal. So 25 just becomes Universal Hero, which is kind of bonkers because Viper likes to go stats. He likes to buy Ags, he likes to go Hurricane Pike. He likes to get Scuddy and Manta and those sort of items. At level 25, that's like 100, 150 damage for free. So yeah, this is a super good talent. Yeah, I'm trying to think, does it affect other things? Like, I guess Timbersaw and stuff. Heroes that do stuff based on your primary attributes. That affects that. And Apex, if you get to late game, you don't really want to get an Apex on Viper anymore with this talent because Apex is kind of shitty on Universal Heroes. So that's something to keep in mind. But I think this is overall just a straight up massive buff. Viper Strike is so much better. Just Viper is back, guys. Viper is actually good. Visage or Visage, however you want to say it. So level 15 talent of 1 armor corruption is replaced with 2 seconds grave chill duration. And the level 20 talent of move speed is replaced with the armor corruption. Oh, that's a nerf. Feels bad. Void Spirit. Almost at the end. We almost made it, guys. Aether Remnant. Axe Shard now makes non-hero units take 30% of abilities damage every second they spend on the Remnant, instead of 1 instance of full damage. So yeah, if creeps and stuff stay in the Aether Remnant, it's going to do more damage. So this might actually make it good for farming now. Instead of doing like 100% damage, you keep them there for 4 seconds, they take 120% damage. Seems good. Dissimulate. Phase duration decreased from 1.3 to 1.1. That's probably a nerf, because you're invulnerable for less time. It's a slight buff because you can get the new count faster, so they have less time to get out of the AoE. But I think in teamfights overall it's just worse for you. Resonant Pulse, Scepter base charge restore time from 18 to 15. This is a nice buff. An Astral Step, mana cost decreased, base charge restore time decreased. Nice. The hero needed a few buffs, and these two are really nice. Yeah, maybe this one might even be a buff overall, but like there's some cases where it's buff, some where it's a nerf. This one I'm not so sure about, but everything else is just a buff. Warlock. Fatal Bonds. Units that die when affected by Fatal Bonds now spawn an imp that lasts 15 seconds. Imp stats improve with each level of Fatal Bonds. Aghanim Shard now also increases the level of imps by 1. Imps cannot be controlled and chase after nearby units, favoring heroes affected by bonds. Upon reaching a target or dying, imps explode, dealing 30, 60, 90, 120, 180 damage. It's 5 levels because you can get the +1 level from Shard. In a 400 radius around them, explosions deal 50% damage to non-hero units. Imps don't spawn from denied enemies. Imps have 30 to 280 health, 10 to 18 damage, 320 to 380 move speed, and they explode after 0.2 seconds. Imps seek any target in a 1200 radius and attack the nearest building if there are no valid targets. Imps don't explode and attack in the building. What the hell? This is just insane. Like, you throw Fatal Bonds on the creep wave in lane, and each creep dies, spawns an imp that runs at you. So level 1, if you get all 4, actually, does Fatal Bonds have a limit now? I forget how they changed this ability. Fatal Bonds. Yeah, it just always binds 6 units. So at level 1, we put this on the creep wave, that's 4 creeps, plus the 2 heroes. You first of all take the damage from the creeps taking damage, the shed damage. And then as each creep dies, that's 30 damage each. So at level 1, you get 120 free damage from imps just running at you and running at your enemy and killing people and killing themselves. This seems honestly kind of crazy. And like even in a team fight or like a gank, if you gank dudes in a creep wave and you just have someone else who nukes a creep wave down, you get a bunch of imps that explode. This seems super good. So Upheaval with Aghanim's Shard now summons imps from the current level of Fatal Bonds, sharing the same stats and changes. Yeah, so those imps are just linked to Fatal Bonds now. Chaotic Offering Golem has 60% slow resistance. And the mana cost is rescaled, less early, more late game. This is nice. The Golem cannot be slowed. Well, it can be slowed, it's just not very effective. He just runs people down. I think this is honestly overpowered. I think it's going to get nerfed. I think that this in lane is just going to be obnoxious to deal with. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's actually crazy. Weaver, Sukuchi. Aghanim Shard upgrade reworked. Now procs Germinate attack 0.2 seconds after exiting the Sukuchi invisibility, And also procs an additional attack if Weaver has level 25 talent plus 1 Geminate attack. Proc store search for marked enemies in 1200 radius around Weaver. Seems nice. I don't think it's too big a buff, but it's probably a bit better. And level 10 security damage increased by 5. Nice. One Ranger. Wind run cooldown reduction decreased from 3 to 2.5. Shackle shot duration increased from 0.65 to 0.75. And focus fire kill advanced cooldown decreased from 20 seconds to 18. Baby nerf, baby buff, baby nerf. Here is pretty much the same. Wyvern. Max HP heal per second increased from... Okay, so it's increased by 0.5 at all levels. Nice. Wyvern can no longer deal physical damage to units affected by Winter's Curse. Affected units now take 30% more magical and pure damage from Wyvern, and units under her control. This is probably a buff overall. Like, you lose the right click damage, but if you just throw like a Splinter Blast, it's 30% more damage. And Arctic Breath, more damage. And cooldown is decreased by 5 seconds. I think it's just small buffs, but they're good. Witch Doctor strength gain decreased by 0.2. Paralyzing Cask bounce delay decreased from 0.3 to 0.1, so it bounced around faster, so it's harder to split up and get away from it. But also, it's not going to stun for as long because it's going to bounce between people faster. I think it's overall a buff to the hero because it's more difficult to separate when you cast. Death Ward now deals pure damage and pierces debuff immunity. What the hell? Damage decreased quite a bit, but because it's pure damage, it's going to do more damage late game. And the accept attacks can now also bounce to creeps, and heroes are prioritized. This is insane. This hero is already really good in Turbo. This hero is just going to destroy people in Turbo now. Like, it's actually going to be disgusting. This hero is... I think they've just overbuffed him. Like, sure, he's not picked in pro games, but in pubs, he's going to destroy people. And then Voodoo Switcheroo, attack speed reduction increased, so it attacks slightly slower, and the mana cost increased, but this is bonkers. This is actually bonkers. Oh yeah, look at it go. Wraith King Skellies now deal 25% more damage to heroes, and they have 2 more armor. Dude, these things are just going to chow supports. So, okay, level 10 plus 2% more lifesteal, and at level 15 plus 0.25% more stun duration. Seems good. This is... If you get all of the skeleton talents, these things are going to be terrifying for supports. And we are at the end. Zeus. Thunder God's Wrath. Damage decreased by quite a lot. But it now also deals damage equal to 5, 7.5, 10% of the target's max HP. So that's a buff overall. Because if they have 1000 HP, that's 100 damage, that's equal. By the time you're level 18, they're going to have more than 1000 HP, so this is just straight buffs. It might be slightly less damage early because they need to have 1000 HP at level 6 for this to be equivalent. And some heroes might not have quite that much, but it's close enough that this is about the same, but it just scales better into the late game. And then ability change from autocast to toggle. So you can turn it off if you want to. So yeah. This means actually if you get silenced, I believe autocast abilities you can't use when you're silenced, but toggles you can. They just stay on because it'll be like Rot or Pulse Nova. Whereas the autocast would be like Frost Arrows or Burning Spears. So this is a buff. Yeah. Zeus is buffed. And that is the patch, guys. Yeah. Let me know what you think. Who do you want to play? Who do you think has been the biggest winner of the patch? Who do you think the losers? What do you think the changes? Like, just look at the changes here. I think this one's interesting, the stages and stuff. I must still see what the new map looks like. It's not a new map, it's just minor changes. But yeah, thanks for watching. This has been Maverick427. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. If you want to see more videos of whatever I happen to upload, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. Mav out.